Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is May 6th, 2025. I am here on location in Knoxville, Tennessee, for part two of a two-part series here from Knoxville. Today's episode is called My Dad Ruined My Mormon Wedding. And we're here with Nathan Hinckley and Kayli Daniels. Hey, guys.
Hi, John. Hi, Margie.
Do y'all have some Southern welcome that you do here in Knoxville?
Well, we would just get up and give you a big hug if we could, but we've got all these mics just perfectly set. So,
how do you like that title, Nathan? You feel good about that?
I feel pretty good about that. I think it's appropriate.
How about you, Kayli?
Encapsulates it perfectly.
Okay. Well, that's a little teaser for today's episode. If y'all are just stumbling on this episode without having seen the previous one, the episode immediately released prior to this is the McCormicks, where we talked about Lindsay and
Todd.
And, it's another Knoxville story, but we talked primarily about the Hinckley family, kind of Lindsay's family, and what happened in terms of Todd and Lindsay questioning and ultimately leaving their Mormon faith, and the difficulties that sort of presented, not only in their ward and in their stake. They were threatened with excommunication twice. It's definitely an interview worth checking out. So if you haven't listened to that yet or watched that yet, we recommend you pause this one, go back and watch that. It will provide important context for today because Bishop Nathan Hinckley is Lindsay Hinckley McCormick's brother. Is that right?
That's right.
So you're Lindsay's brother.
Yep. And we're the middle two siblings, and we have two other brothers as well. So,
and for those who didn't listen, this Hinckley name is uniquely Mormon. Is that right?
Oh, of course. So we are second cousins 3 times removed to Gordon B. Hinckley.
Who was,
he was, I call him my prophet, from my time growing up. So,
yeah, so y'all are kind of royalty, Mormon royalty a little bit.
I guess you could say that.
So we're going to be talking about Nathan and Kayli's relationship as father-daughter and faith stuff that happened with them that impacted her wedding, etc. But it's also just in the context of kind of a Knoxville, Hinckley kind of heavily Mormon family and how faith crises kind of impact, as we used to call it, the mission field, which bizarrely is any location outside of Utah. Mormons call it the mission field. Have y'all heard that before?
Yeah. And I get it too. Just, I feel like it's different. It's different out here, growing up in a school that you're the only Mormon family. I feel like it's, there is a difference in the mission field.
Yeah. And then we probably should mention, Nathan, that you've been on Mormon Stories once before, at least. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I was just looking it up before you got here, John. It's almost exactly a year ago. I think we're just shy, maybe 2 weeks. But so I had posted on the Mormon Stories community page that my stake president wanted to talk to me about my Facebook posts. And I put a picture on there that said, "This is me on my way to talk to the stake president." And after a short time after that, you and I spoke, and we kind of did a follow up on how that all went. So
yeah, yep. And so that's all probably going to come up again a little bit because I think even that Mormon Stories interview you did had implications for your family as well. So yeah, strap in for another classic Mormon Stories with a little bit of Southern flair for today. And Margie, you're here with us as well. What are you doing here in Knoxville?
Happy to be here.
Margie and I are sharing microphones today because we had a problem with our mixer. So
that's right. We are.
All right. Anyway, it's good to be here. It's fun to, and occasionally we do these. We did a remote interview in Nashville with the Ellsworth Rogers. And so anyway, it's fun to be back in Tennessee. So let's just back up really quick, even though we will have covered this a bit with Lindsay and Todd. But let's just briefly tell from your perspective how the Hinckleys end up in Tennessee and, what it was like from your perspective a bit, Nathan, growing up as a Mormon, devout Mormon, as a Hinckley in Knoxville, Tennessee area.
Perfect. Okay, so I was born in Utah, in Layton, Utah. I now have a son named Layton, but I won't jump ahead too much. We moved to the South when I was a baby. So we moved to Georgia and then settled in Tennessee. We actually came, my parents were musicians. They played music and they were mostly country music. And so there was a lot more demand for that out in this part of the country. So they came to Tennessee. You might have heard of Dollywood before.
Yeah.
They played at Dollywood for 20 years as a duo, as a music, mostly country music duo. Anyways, so music brought my family to Tennessee, and music has actually been a large part of all of our lives. I'll probably get into that a little bit later. But anyways, grew up in the Knoxville area, did all of the normal things like, Eagle Scout. Dad was our scoutmaster. The youth conferences. In that time, we used to do a lot of church activities like church basketball, church softball, church dances. I met my then girlfriend when I was several months shy of my 15th birthday. And so we kind of started dating a little bit. Well, we dated until we got married. So I won't jump ahead there either yet. But anyway, so growing up was great. I loved it. I felt like I was different. Was the only member, my family, the only member family in our school for the most part. So it was, but I loved being different. I loved being right. I loved being part of the true church, and it was great.
So was there a lot of sort of true believing Mormon orthodoxy in your family growing up, in the Hinckley family in Knoxville, or was it more liberal? Was it more loosey-goosey Southern? How was it?
Yeah. So I think it was, for the most part, I mean, we were always active. There was never a time of inactivity.
Meaning you attended weekly?
We attended weekly.
Meetings.
Even when mom and dad would be singing late night, Saturday night, we would get up and we were always active. I don't feel like we probably were that great at, scripture study and things like that. We did a lot of family time. So we might not have had traditional family home evening, but we did a lot of family activities. So, for the most, no, not loosey goosey. We were true believing and we lived,
So alcohol, no alcohol?
Oh, no.
Tea?
No.
Coffee? Tobacco?
No, none of that, John. And
R-rated movies?
No.
Shoulders?
No.
Women wear shoulders?
No.
Just mini skirts?
Did you show your shoulders?
I did show my shoulders. But all of the things we joke about it now, but that was just normal life. Now that I've been out, we go back and we're like, oh, we never saw this movie or that movie. But no, we didn't watch rated R movies. We didn't do those things. And of course, the word of wisdom, that was easy. I mean, it wasn't even a challenge. It was just we didn't do that.
Did you grow up in a ward or a branch?
A ward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a stake.
Yeah. And
what's the stake that you grew up in?
The stake at first was just the Knoxville stake, and then it split. And
okay.
So there was
growth.
Stakes. Yeah.
Okay. And so in your high school, you were the only Mormon family? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So our ward covered a few schools, and so there were a few in each one. But I think our family in our high school was the only Mormon family.
And were there enough youth in your ward/stake to have a vibrant youth program?
We had a pretty good size youth program. Probably 10 or 12 young men, and they were friends. And I will say the bishop that we had growing up was my idol. I loved the guy.
What'd you love about him?
He was so animated. He almost would remind you of what you would think of as almost like a Baptist preacher who was talking with his hands, and he just really just a full of life guy.
Southern guy?
Yeah.
Local?
Yeah. Local guy. He later became the stake president, and that's
he comes back into the story?
Yeah, he kind of comes back into the story.
Okay.
So anyways, I love that guy. There was one time we did the road shows, and he was getting released. And so this was a big stake activity, and I had put together a road show where I was being him. He had all these little catchphrases that he would say, and so it was a real hit. Just to just kind of poke fun a little bit, but I idolized the guy. I just truly loved him, and it was a big part of growing up. Having a bishop that you wanted to be like him.
Roadshows are like mini musicals. Is that right?
Yeah.
You put them on for other congregations and
right.
have competitions and stuff.
Yeah.
And you did all the sports like basketball and all that stuff. Softball, did you have softball?
Yeah, we did softball, basketball. I think we even did some volleyball tournaments too. So
so let's just say your high school years in the church, did you do early morning seminary and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not only that, I had an early morning choir class at school. So then I'm meeting early morning seminary before that. So I had two classes before most other people even got going with their first.
And were you one of those Mormon teens that kind of goofed off with the church rules in high school, or were you like a straight arrow or something in the middle?
I was pretty straight. I know my daughter's sitting right beside me. Other than, having to go talk to the bishop occasionally about my girlfriend. Other than that, it was pretty by the book, pretty by the rules.
So by the time you graduate from high school, are you like a true believer, Orthodox, ready for a mission and all that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you do something before your mission after high school? Or
I just worked.
Just
worked. Did some construction, and matter of fact, so my wife, her name is Amy, and she grew up on about 80 acres of family land, and there was one
here.
Yeah, here in we're in about an hour north of Knoxville. Well, anyways, there was a house that, long story short, it was called the Playhouse at the time. It was a small house, but they called it the Playhouse. Well, her and I worked on this house before my mission, and we said, we're going to get married and live here. And I served a mission in Argentina, and 6 weeks after I got back, we got married and moved into the Playhouse that we had worked on and added on to. And so
on your wife's family's property.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Talk really quickly just about the Hinckley family's reputation within the wards and stakes of this area. Was it important to keep up the reputation? Did your family, were they concerned about how they were perceived? And did the Hinckley name even play into that with Mormons in the Knoxville area or not?
That's a good question. I feel like there has always been I think most people, when they think of the Hinckley name, they associate it with music, especially in the stake. My dad was on the High Council a lot, traveling around. There was multiple times that we put on stake-sponsored firesides, like musical firesides. Later on, me and my two brothers started a band, and we started doing some EFY entertainment.
I joked it was like the Hillbilly Osmonds, right? Did we come up with a good name for the?
Oh, we joked about it. I don't know if we settled on a name, but that would have explained, kind of described the Hinckleys, and really still does. That's a large part of who we are. But definitely active, definitely always at all of the things, at all of the events, all of the conferences, or wilderness youth conference and things like that.
I guess I've noticed that in stakes outside of Utah, Mormon stakes, there are always these families, these Mormon families that are kind of pillars of the, ward or stakes, that they're a part of. And they're just known as like, yeah, you name 5 or 6 families in the stake, and these are like the salt of the earth pillars of the church. Would the Hinckley family maybe be kind of viewed as a pillar family in the Knoxville area for Mormons? Is that fair?
I would say so.
Okay.
And then we have, family that would be, grouped into all that my dad's sisters in our stake. And so anyways, between, yes, I think we would be looked at as some of the pillars of the ward or stake.
Okay. All right. So you served a mission, you married your dear wife, and did y'all decide to settle here? Was there any question about where you would settle?
Well, no, not at first. We settled, like I said, in the Playhouse. And
but I mean, you weren't going to move to Utah.
No.
You're going to stay in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, there was a time that we did move around a little bit. I got a job doing LDS church construction. So I basically spent a year in 3 different states as a superintendent over the church job.
So your profession, through, let's just say, Kayli's high school how did it advance your career, your occupation?
That was pretty much it. Just either doing those construction jobs, or I did a lot of stuff on my own of building and remodeling and things like that.
Videography, did that come later?
That was a little bit later, yeah.
Okay,
so I was moving around at all these jobs, and the stake, one of the stake presidency members said, we really need you to come back here. Well, we would come home on the weekends. So I had callings and everything. Then we were gone through the weeks for the construction job. Anyways, he gives me a blessing one time, and in his blessing, he says, "I bless you that you'll be able to come back home and help out the stake," or something like that. And it was right after that I started doing videography, and I had always kind of associated the blessing with that, but it kind of took off, and I've been doing it now for about 14 years, and it's a full-time job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So were you going to raise your family just like you were raised? Did you have different ideas for your family culture and how it was going to be relative to your parents' sort of culture and family?
I would say I wanted to be just like my dad.
Okay.
He was an Eagle Scout. I wanted to be an Eagle Scout. He went on a mission. So did I. He married in the temple. He did music. He was, we were always really tight and close. So, no, I had no other desires than to have a family just like he does, everyone in the church. And I wasn't looking or needing anything other than what I had.
And it seems like your siblings all decided to settle here in the Knoxville area as well, which I think meant that y'all were all going to stay really close, everyone in the church, and a really close-knit family. You were pretty close to your siblings, right?
Oh, for sure. So one brother actually did go to Nashville. He's in the Nashville area, where he should be. He's a great songwriter, but still close enough that we have always got together. Like I said, we had a band. We would work together. We would do construction jobs together. Later, when I started the videography, that's also with one of my brothers. So we were always either working or playing, together. And that was just kind of, and I thought it was so weird to see other families that didn't jive, that didn't get along, or, people would say, "Oh no, you never start a business with family members." That's kind of and I'm like, why? Like it, that just seemed the normal thing for us. We have always been very tight.
Would you mind just taking a minute? Like, if you were to describe your family, even growing up, but up to this point, like, what is your family vibe? What does it feel like? Because I think, Mormon families can feel really different. I think some are really, there can be seriousness, intensity. What was like your family's vibe? It seems like with the music that there's like a real aliveness, even fun.
Yeah. So, anytime we would get together, so my parents have like a basement stage area. So it was always little music concerts, just spur of the moment.
With your siblings and their children and everybody.
And with our parents as well. Yeah. So that was always one of the huge things for us. We also would like to play volleyball as a family. So, that's pretty much describes what we would like to do.
And so could you have ever imagined, like if I had gone to you 5 years ago, like Ghosts of Christmas Past or whatever, and I just said, can you ever imagine a day where any members of your, let's say 15 years ago, could you ever imagine a day where some of your siblings will be out of the church? You probably would have said what?
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. There was no indication that would ever happen for even our extended family. Like it wasn't just our core family, but we were all in, and that's all we ever wanted for each other.
And if I'd gone back to you 10 or 15 years ago and said, can you imagine a day where church stuff actually strains or even divides relationships in your family? Could you have imagined that ever happening?
Not at all.
No?
I would have said that the church would have been the most important part to keep people together. And that there's no reason it would divide. It's true. I was very, very black and white. True or false, right or wrong. And so for me, the church was true, and you needed to get in line and believe it. If they said it, that's what it was.
You were kind of hardcore. You weren't nuanced.
Not at all. Okay. I didn't
Kylie, why are you laughing, Kylie?
I didn't know the word nuanced.
Kayli, tell us why you're laughing.
Yeah, we didn't know the word nuance.
No?
That was not a word that we were taught growing up. No.
Okay. Super Orthodox.
Yes.
All right. Let's go ahead and get Kayli in here. So Kayli, what was your experience growing up in the kind of Mormon context, but also in your family's context?
So I grew up on that same 80 acres that my mom grew up on. And we're focusing on the Hinckleys, but I think would have identified with my Smith side, which was the land that I grew up on. So I think we've been calling it the compound.
But she's not related to Joseph Smith, I'm guessing. There's a lot of
not
Smiths
that I know of. No, okay. Maybe somewhere. Who knows? It was always called the Mormon Holler by like everyone at school because we're in a very, I would say, Baptist area. And so it was a thing to be Mormon. So anyway, I grew up on the same land that she grew up on, riding four-wheelers, being out, like if the sun's up, I'm out in the woods. I'm playing in my own playhouse. I'm building fires, things like that. So I would say that a little bit different, but probably more like my mom grew up, more so than my dad. Very one with nature and that kind of thing. And but still Mormonism being, if you're not outside playing in the woods, you're at church. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but I would say that I identified more with I would have been happy to say that church I was and still am very attached to places, and the church building that I grew up in was like a second home for me. Like my dad was saying, the first couple years of my life, we were in a couple different states, but we always came home on the weekends. So I lived in several different houses, but on Saturday and Sunday, I was at the home that I grew up in, my childhood home, but also church. Like Sunday was church day, and that's what we were there for 3 hours every Sunday. And then as soon as that was over, we would head back to whatever state or house we were in. So it was central to my childhood, not only church, but this church building, which I think, I don't know, is a very big part for me, just areas where I feel safe. And because we were moving around so much, I felt safe, of course, with my family, but the church building, just the physical building was so important to me growing up.
You mentioned in your outline having kind of scrupulosity or religiously perfectionistic thoughts, and not differently. real concerns about modesty, clothing, and from a very young age. Do you want to talk about those early recollections of religious shame and guilt?
Yeah. I think the first ones that come to mind are when I was really little, and I would have just like a picture of something in my head, whether it be something inappropriate or not, just feeling this weight on my shoulders to have to tell somebody. So it could be, picturing or seeing something online, like somebody naked or something, or just picturing somebody that I know. And I would have to go immediately to my mom once I had this thought and tell her. And only then would I feel like this weight off of my shoulders. So that's like the first like memory that I have of having like a really guilty conscience. That kind of grew. I was kind of teaching myself that I have to tell somebody else about these thoughts in order to feel like okay and to have this weight off of my shoulder. So from there, I think it went to not thinking about other people, but thinking about my own body and not liking that. Like it was the same negative connotation that I had with others that I had to myself. So not looking in the mirror when I would change, and especially when buying clothes, it was a garment mindset from the time that I was kindergarten for sure.
So yeah, that I'm just blown away by that. But explain to our Never Mormons what a garment mindset would mean, especially to a Mormon 5-year-old.
Little. Well, I would see my mom and dad, walking through the house in their garments, just the knee length, the shoulder covered shoulders with your clothes. Yeah, sleeves.
Well, women.
Yeah.
And men.
Yeah. Seeing him never without a shirt, like except for being in the pool or something. It was always covered shoulders and bathing suits, especially. I had cousins that I grew up with in the Mormon Holler, all similar ages. And I would always have my mama be like, I wish you would dress more like your cousins, cute and girly. And I would just be like, no, mama, like I'm going to be in garments at some point. So I might as well start dressing like it now.
Now, was she active Mormon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
But she...
I had two little centers of Mormonism in my life. So the Hinckley Center and then the Smith Center, both equally orthodox, equally held very high expectations.
But you weren't going to wear a bikini.
No. No.
Except when you did.
Except for the one time, which again, I was really little, probably 5 or 6, went to a friend's house and didn't have a bathing suit. It was me, my cousin, and then my friend. And the friend was handing out bathing suits, and the only one that fit me was a bikini. And I remember saying, no, like I'm not going to wear that. And the mom came in and was like, here, no one's here, Kayli. No, there's no men here. You can wear this. So I put it on, and I remember viscerally feeling like I wanted to peel my skin off. Like it was that disgusted with myself. And I think I remember getting in the pool for like a second and then getting back out because her dad had shown up, and then immediately getting picked up and telling my mom that I had worn a bikini. And it was just her trying to be like, we don't wear bikinis, Kayli. But in my mind, it was shame on you. You're not supposed to do that. And the guilt was already so heavy on me that I was like, you're right. Like I knew that was wrong and I still did it. And that's why I feel so bad. And that's why I had to come home and tell you. But that's just me, 5, 6 years old, already internalizing all of this. I know better and I'm not going to screw up again. And I did not screw up again. I never wore a bikini my entire childhood.
Oh, wow.
After that point.
You mentioned your outline, the teachings around the second coming being really significant kind of in your early adolescence. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I would get really excited. Of course, church is 3 hours at that point still. And it's a long, boring Sunday for the most part. But I would always get so excited when we would talk about the second coming and the millennium, topics like that. And I remember growing up having these lessons and it always being very positive that when Jesus comes again, an angel could knock on your bathroom door. You could be in the shower and an angel would knock on your bathroom door and be like, hey, come on, Jesus is here. Let's go. And it would be such a happy time. Of course, I'm however old, 6, 7, 8 in these classes with a teacher that knows, the same amount that I know, basically just telling a child whatever a child needs to be told to be excited about church and things like that. But I am black and white like my dad. And so whenever I learned something, even if I was 8 or however old, that is what I expected the truth to be. So I don't remember how I found out. I think maybe I was listening to an adult conversation that I shouldn't have been listening to. But I remember hearing my aunts and uncles and mom and dad talking about the second coming and how there would be war and disease and all these things that are found in the scriptures, and just feeling like, number one, embarrassed, but number two, that I had been lied to. And I remember going to my older cousin and saying, did you know about all of this, that they've been lying to us at church?
Wait, how are they lying? Just they didn't paint it as violent as it actually was?
Well, that was a lie to me, to say that an angel could just knock on your door and tell you to come on, Jesus is here. But that is not what's going to happen. That is according...
Instead, what was the Mormon version of second coming?
I mean, at that point, I didn't know, but the wars and the famine and the death, and that even if you do think you're A-okay, even if you are a faithful member, you still might not survive it.
So I think what she is referring to, there was a time in this Mormon holler that she, first of all, do you know what a holler is?
I mean, tell our audience. I do. My sister lives in Kentucky, so I do know.
It's just like, I don't know.
Deep woods, one gravel road in, one gravel road out.
But anyway, so there was multiple families, all Mormon. And so we would have family home evenings together. And one of the books that we started basing our family home evenings on was As a Thief in the Night. It's all about the prophecies of the in last days, and how there'll be wars, and the cities will be. Okay. It's very problematic.
Visions of Glory.
Yes,
Visions of Glory.
Yes.
Okay.
It's basically that.
Got it. Okay.
It's a companion to Visions of Glory.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very problematic.
I mean, in the Book of Mormon, when Jesus comes the first time, like cities are burned, like volcanoes erupt, just entire civilizations, men, women, children are all slaughtered when Jesus comes the first time. And it's, it's part two when he comes again in Mormonism, fire and torture and, floods and famine. It's horrible. I remember once my kids coming home with like a worksheet. You remember that, Margie? Of like all the ways people were going to die in the second coming. And it was like hail and fire and poison and locusts and scorpions and snakes. And anyway, we belabored the point. Go ahead,
so one thing that Kayli said a second ago, I remember driving down the road with her, and I don't know what age, but I was going to come clean on Santa. And I said, do you want me to tell you the truth? And she said, yeah. And I said, told her the truth. And then you remember what you said after that?
I said, what about the tooth fairy?
And then she says, the Easter bunny too. So, I mean, if we taught her something, she believed it.
Yeah. And how old were you when you were asking that?
I would have remembered, like, if I had written this down. I feel like it was fourth grade, maybe.
So quite young. Yeah. That's a young time.
But I remember telling her, now all of these things are not real, but all of the church things are, like Joseph Smith and Jesus and God. And, I don't know. I tried to comfort her in that, because her heart was broken.
Well, because my first instinct was to say, well, we can't see Santa, but I still was supposed to believe in him. I can't see Jesus, but am I still supposed to believe in him too? And he was immediately like, whoa, wait, that's not a connection you're supposed to make. Yes, we still believe in Jesus, of course. I know we're lying to you about this, but we're not lying to you about that, which is very hard for me, especially when I'm still, like, it would have been not long after that the second coming thing not being a nice time. So it was just another thing that I was like, why I understand it's not pretty to tell a child that, but at the same time, I trusted you all. I'm sitting in these classes, trusting what you're telling me. At some point you have to tell me that you're lying. And I don't know. I did not like that. I didn't like that.
So can I ask you a follow-up about that, just to explore your brain at that time, if you can remember? So for you, was the issue more around truth? Like that was a lie. What you said actually was not true. Was it more about that? Like, was there part of you also that was like, well, now I'm scared. Like, that's terrifying. And so, like, did it reinforce perfectionism? Like this idea of like, oh, wait, there will be even righteous people. Can righteous people actually die during that too? Do you remember?
I remember wanting to be prepared because our family had all of the food storage and things like that. So I think my focus was, I like, if this is actually going to happen and maybe soon, that was always a thing for me. Like, what's the point in going to school? What's the point in thinking I'm getting married if the second coming is now
Imminent.
and soon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and if it is imminent, shouldn't I be preparing just like you? Okay, I'm 8 years old, but I'm still going to be affected in the same way you are. So it was just that. I remember then getting on my little phone and searching, I think probably the scripture and Revelation about, okay, so what is actually going to happen? I want to know now what you all weren't telling me. And I remember getting with my cousin and looking it up and, okay, so it is going to be scary. It is going to be dangerous. And no, I'm not guaranteed to make it as however old I was.
I think that's part of the function of the second coming teaching. It's like Santa in that you better be good or else.
Yeah.
So talk about, you mentioned your outline when you were around 11, you learned the word feminist for the first time. Was it in a young women's context?
It would have been, yes, it would have been some of my first days in Mutual.
Activity days,
yeah, it was either my first days in Mutual or one of my last days in activity days. I think it was young women's maybe. We have in our ward, we have people moving in and out. But there was for the medical school that's nearby. And so there was a girl who was a little bit older than me, maybe 16 at that point, who was talking about being a feminist in our Mutual. We were making cookies or something. Like, it wasn't like we were having a conversation about feminism, but the teacher was quick to be like, we are not feminist. We do not even talk about that word. And I remember watching her reaction, the girl that had said she was a feminist, and she was very much like red-faced, embarrassed. And I think she might have like said something back or whatever. But at that point I was like, okay, we don't use that word. We do not identify with that word. I don't even know if I knew what it was at that point, but I just remember being like, okay, I don't identify with that word. I don't even say that word because I'm not going to get yelled at in the church, especially not in the church. I'm not going to get yelled at. So,
and looking back, you mentioned that in your outline. Why?
Because it was reinforcing in my mind that, well, it was becoming a thing, and it was becoming a cool thing to be. That's why the girl was telling everyone I'm a feminist. And so the teacher specifically, I think, was reinforcing that in our brains. Even if you don't know what this word means, it's a bad word. And if you hear people saying they're a feminist, you don't identify with those people. And it just immediately like divided our class. Not even divided it. It singled out this girl.
Kind of shamed her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, as I understand it, the kind of pure definition of feminism is the belief that men and women should be treated equally.
It probably would have been around, I'm not sure. I remember at that time there was talk about women receiving the priesthood, and women don't need the priesthood. And so it might have also been a way for her to not start that, the teacher to not start that conversation in the class. I was too little to really know what was going on, but I do know that was a thing at the time.
Got it.
So I don't know.
So you mentioned your outline discovering the CES letter at age 12.
Yes.
Yeah.
That did happen.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I've always been a reader. I've been online. I think when I was in 3rd grade, I had a flip phone. And then from that time, maybe the next year, I had like an actual iPhone. And I had a Facebook and I had all these things. I started a book blog, and I had an Instagram with like 6,000 followers when I was like 12 and 13 years old. Yes, I knew my way around the internet, all of that to say. And so I think I was around 12 when I would have seen like an article, and I can't remember it now, but it was somebody writing an article about how the CES letter ruined my faith or something like that. And I had just read like the article title, and I put it down and I went to my mom. Actually, it might have been a few days later because I would have been terrified of that. But however long it took me to finally go to my mom and say, I just saw this article title and I'm wondering what the CES letter is. And she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I think I probably told her what the article title was. And she picked up on the fact that it was anti pretty quickly and shut it down immediately. So much so that he never caught wind of it. She was immediately like, we don't read anti blogs, anti-liter, anything anti-Mormon, we don't touch. And that was my first glimpse into, okay, CES letter, don't touch. Anything remotely anti, don't touch, don't read, don't see.
No bikinis, no feminism, no anti-Mormon CES
No
letter.
CES letter, yes.
And no dating till 16.
And no dating till 16.
So yeah, you mentioned, and this is just directly from your outline, feeling completely sexually cut off and hating your body. So let's just talk going into kind of adolescence. Why are you mentioning that as important in your journey?
Because I always had the garment mindset. There was a point when we were buying clothes for school and my mom basically said, you're a kid. It's okay to dress like a kid. It's okay to dress like your cousins. You can be girly. You can, but I still, and I think I was like, okay, at that point, and I wore a little bit shorter shorts or maybe wore a tank top from time to time. Still no bikinis. But it was just like when I would play basketball, because I was a basketball player, I would wear the knee pads because I didn't like my legs. I didn't want to, people, like I was fine playing basketball. I have anxiety, but for some reason, when I would play basketball, it would just go away. But for some reason, like the thought of people seeing my legs it was a tank top actually. Our uniforms were tank tops, which I didn't have a problem with. But my legs, for some reason, I just have always, I don't know, just had they're supposed to be covered to the knees, and so there's something wrong with showing them, and that just has always, I guess, internalized in not liking my body, not really seeing the point. I just have a body to cover it up. So what, like, it was just more so another thing I had to worry about. Like, because my anxiety was so bad from elementary into high school, it was just another thing that I had to worry about. And I already had a lot of that. So,
I mean, it seems like many people like religion or churches because they help keep people who otherwise wouldn't stay in line or, behave in appropriate ways. It keeps them focused and knowing what's right and trying to do what's right. But that can get really difficult for someone who's got scrupulosity, who's highly anxious, highly compliant, and perfectionistic. What can be a good set of guidelines for healthy, normal adolescent upbringing can become toxic for the right type of scrupulous, perfectionistic personality. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that how it was for you?
Yes, especially when I was growing up with my two cousins who were the same age as me, and I saw them dating and they were getting the guys and they were even like young. I was still seeing this. Okay, so the short shorts and the bikinis equals attention from boys, which I didn't want because I knew I had to wait until I was 16 anyway. So it was, I think I write that I used it as a shield. Like it protected me. But at the same time, it was also putting up a shield socially where I didn't know how to speak to boys. I didn't know how I was supposed to interact in a way that was, we can be friends, or I didn't ever want to give off the vibe that I was looking for more. I remember getting chocolates from a boy on Valentine's Day one year when I was in middle school or something. And I went to the bathroom and I threw up because I had made him think that I was interested in him. And that was, I didn't wear the shorts. I didn't wear the bikinis. I thought I was doing the right thing here. Everyone knows I can't date till I'm 16. But yet here I'm getting a box of chocolates with, will you date me? Yes or no? And I was like, I've done everything right. Yet I'm still having to deal with this.
And in some ways, like, it sounds like you're thinking it's your fault.
Yeah.
Like you did all the things, but still I got the chocolates. What can I do? Like,
yeah, which sounds terrible now. Like he was just being kind.
Yeah.
And not that the boys were crazy for me, like not anything like that. I didn't want attention. I didn't want people to look at me.
Yeah, I'm hearing the fear.
So why is it not working? It's supposed to work.
Yeah, because I guess if everything's been highly sexualized, in other words, bare shoulders can be sexual, bare knees can be sexual, a movie can be sexual, a boy showing interest is just inherently sexual. It kind of adds this potential valence or charge to everything that's almost inappropriate for kids and teenagers, because it's basically it's sexualizing everything for kids whose minds necessarily shouldn't be on sex all the time. And weirdly, bizarrely, the church doesn't want the kids thinking about sex all the time. But by sexualizing clothes and food and drink and programs, it probably makes it worse. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of backfires. So along this same time, I went into the bishopric when she was really young. And I was in the bishopric for like 10 years and before I was called to be bishop. So a lot of this stuff, as I hear her say it, I'm sort of hearing it kind of for the first time, sadly to say. Like I didn't pick up on a lot of this stuff. I went to church before the family. I stayed after. I, was constantly doing those kinds of things. So yeah, a lot of that, we were a tight family and we were always together and traveling, and on the weekends and coming back. But all that to say, yeah, the church calling definitely didn't help in that aspect of being able to really understand some things that, and, maybe my wife, maybe it was a little bit more appropriate on some things. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I was doing during that time, is meeting with the families of the ward and worrying about everyone else.
How does it make you feel to hear her talk about how she was conceptualizing the church standards now that you're hearing it?
I have seen it with my wife as well. I've seen the same things that she's saying with the way that she looked at her body and the shame and the guilt and all of this. She got it honestly. That's we've been out of the church now for 2 years, and we're still working through a lot of those things.
So hearing Kayli talk about these things makes you feel what?
It makes me feel like, for one, I dropped the ball when I was busy doing other things, when I wish I would have been having to ride with my family to church instead of, so yeah, I feel a bit of responsibility there.
Yeah.
But I didn't vocalize it to anyone and wouldn't have vocalized it to him and probably wouldn't have even understood it myself that that's what was happening. So there's no ball being dropped. There's just really high standards that I was set on meeting, and it was not
But
easy.
as far as the coming across the CES letter, we would have, like you said, we would have shut that down. Don't look at that. I didn't know what it was. There was one time when I was a teenager that my dad had a friend had brought over the Godmakers video, and he had heard about it, and he says, okay, she was interested in the church. And so we sat down and watched it together. And other than that was like the one time I was like, what is this stuff? So we were told not to look at the anti stuff. And I never did. I did not seek any of that out. Yeah, she's absolutely right. If she would have told my wife, what is this? Whatever, we would have said, what are you doing? Don't look there. That's not, and it's just lies.
I have a little bit of a follow-up question, because in relationship to your evaluative self, it sounds like you're evaluating all the time, your adherence to modesty or different things. I think the church can sometimes have mixed messages here for women growing up, especially around covering up your body, but also messages around being attractive. So I guess I'm curious, did you have any type of scrupulousness in your evaluation with like beauty? Or was it more around just adherence to the rules?
I think it was the rules. I think because I had, so my two cousins, one is older and one is younger. So I was kind of watching my older cousin. I don't know, like she was, into makeup way before. And I remember getting makeup for Christmas one year, finally, when I was 14, a little way older than she was when she kind of started doing the girly things. And not like, I was excited, but also feeling like, okay, so I wear makeup now, which makes me basically a woman, which means I have to start doing woman things, which means I have to start preparing to be a mother, which was what we were doing when I went from activity days to Young Women's. I went from writing little songs and writing little raps that we would perform for each other in activity days and having so much fun to having days where we would learn to bake spaghetti. And we would do like spa days where we would like pamper each other. But I didn't like those kinds of things. So it just was, it was telling me you should like to do each other's makeup. Oh, the nails, we would paint each other's nails, but I bit my nails to like the point where they would bleed. So I would come in from my anxiety. So I would come in on Wednesday night for my nails to be painted, to be girly, to be, the woman that I'm supposed to be. And there would be nothing to paint.
Yeah.
And that was like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not like these other girls who are pretty and cute and have the nails and the makeup and I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
So I need to figure out what's wrong there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't so much like get that from the church, I don't think, but just seeing the other girls that I was with prioritize that and my cousins and having that from my grandparents or my grandma saying, dress more like them and be more like them.
Yeah. Just because we have it culturally too, of course, not just in. Okay. So my next question is just, I'm really feeling like your internal self, your inner self being this place that's very, it's like extreme and kind of aggressive to you as you're living, and also like lonely, like it's going on inside and no one really, it seems like, knows about it on the outside, right? And so my question is just this seriousness that you've had, like, since you've been young, like just a little girl. Do you feel like you had places where you didn't feel that, where you were able to like just be free of that for a minute and just feel joy, or just be young and have a sense of freedom? Did you have a break from this incessant aggressive part of you to be perfect at all times?
So I loved to read. I loved to read. I so much so that it became like I had a huge, he built me a bookshelf, a huge collection of books, and it's the cliche of disappearing into, but I did. Like it was so realistic for me. These stories, these people, these characters, and just loving to read. So that on that note though, you sometimes ask like, how were you perceived as a child? And I just, this isn't a happy thing. But I was always a drama queen or smile more, or which isn't, I don't think that's normal for a Mormon girl. Like they're happy. I'm a Mormon girl and I wear my hair in curls and that type of thing. And I just never could. Like, how are you today, Kayli? Tired. They hated that response, but it was always a response I gave because I was always so tired. And I only know why I said that now, but it's because of all of the restrictions and the rules and the things that I didn't know that were weighing down on me. And I could never figure out why that was the word that came out of my mouth. I was also a brat a lot, which just, I don't know, like I was a happy kid. I loved my childhood. I loved the Mormon Holler and I loved my family and I loved church. there was a mark I was missing time and time again because I had the Mormon girls in Utah that I was trying to live up to on social media. And I had my cousins who were girly and played sports better than me or cheered or, something that's very like peppy.
Yeah.
And I wasn't peppy. I wasn't.
Yes. I so get the tired.
Yeah.
And the brat thing to me just totally makes sense for what happens with an overwhelmed child. Like an overwhelmed child is gonna act that way. And how could you not be with, it sounds like all that you were taking in at that time. Yeah.
And I probably was a lot of the time, but it was also not only this church side, but this school side, because I had to have A's. And I remember making a 93 on a test, and he came in and talked to my teacher and was like, Kayli doesn't make, or maybe it's a 92. It was a B. He was like, Kayli doesn't make B's. She makes A's. And I made A's. Like if I was missing the mark here, I was not going to miss the mark here. So on top of all of the church things and the needing to do personal progress and the needing to go to church for 3 hours and all the things, and basketball, I had to go to basketball. I had to do well in basketball. I also had to study, and I had to do the homework, and I had to do well. I couldn't just be mediocre.
When Margie was asking that question, both Margie and you started to get emotional, and it was around the question of seriousness. And I think a companion to that was just the idea of having a chance to be a girl or a teen versus kind of a mini adult. And the religion kind of reinforces the seriousness. Do you have anything you want to share about what was coming up for you when you were starting to, tear up a little bit?
I was remembering talking to my mom about saying how tired I was all the time, and we put me on medicine. We did all these things, and
like depression medication
for the anxiety, yeah. And I remember not, like my dad said last night, he's not a doctor guy. Like we don't do medicine because there's.
Meaning he doesn't like to go to doctors.
Yeah. He's also not a doctor, but yeah.
But I would have at that time, I would have said, pull your boots up or whatever, your bootstraps, get yourself, like you don't need medication. Like I was black and white and I don't need this and I'm fine. You can, so.
The gospel.
Yeah.
The gospel would be enough to make you happy if you're living it right.
Yeah. You need a blessing, get a blessing or something. But, I was that way.
Yeah. And it's also reinforcing like this idea of, well, it couldn't possibly be that these expectations are just, far beyond a child's reach, but it has to be something with you. Let's medicate you. Let's do something with you because you're not able to kind of show up with a happy face as you're trying to be this perfect human in all ways when you're like 8 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just brings to mind the fact that because I was so focused on the fact that I didn't smile, there was a stretch of probably 6 years where I couldn't figure out how to smile in pictures because I would smile and then I would be like, that's not authentic. That's not, I'd rather be frowning right now. So the fact that I'm trying to smile for a picture, I was so in my head, like over every little thing. But I specifically remember a stretch of several years where I would not want to be photographed, or I would be in a picture. I'd be forced into a picture because Kayli's being a brat again. And I would try to smile and it wouldn't reach my eyes. And I would look back at the picture and be like, yep, I'm not happy. And it wasn't that, like, I think the gospel did make me happy. And I think that I loved my childhood and I loved my family. But there was still just this inner me that was like, why am I not, if all of these things, why is it not equaling me expressing myself as happy?
Powerful. You mentioned a story or talk about Elder Gong. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, and that would have been high school. Elder Gong came for a state conference.
So for those who don't know, he's one of the Mormon apostles. He's one of the 12, quorum of the 12.
And we listened to a talk that he gave, and we were all so excited. And the next day in seminary, of course it's 6 a.m., the teacher comes in and is like, I have something to tell you all. And I guess a story was circulating the stake that a little boy had run up to him after his talk, after conference had closed. And the little boy ran up to him and said, so do you all like actually talk to Jesus? Does the prophet actually talk to Jesus? And he bent down and like held his hands and said, would it have been Monson at that time?
Probably.
Basically saying he's best friends with Jesus, which the kid asked a question, do they see Jesus? And the response was, he's best friends with Jesus. So she's telling us, I'm 15, 16. She's telling us this to say, so there's your answer.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, that's my answer.
Yeah, there's this weird thing in Mormonism where the apostles, we're taught that these apostles in the first presidency are, quote, special witnesses of Christ, that they probably have seen Jesus and talked to him. And that gives them a lot of power over us, because then when they come to speak, when they speak at general conference or when they come to visit our stake or our area, then it's as if we're hearing the words of Jesus. Now, they've also told in different settings that they don't speak to Jesus, and that's not literal, that they have the same type of prayers that we all do. So the church kind of does this double messaging of wanting us to take every word they say as scripture and to obey.
Yeah.
But then, and it can put a lot of pressure on us to believe and obey every little thing they say, which might not always be healthy. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and he was telling that to a kid, and was it supposed to circulate like that? No. And I understand, but again, it's me sitting as a student being taught by a teacher that I'm supposed to trust. And she believes that this was an answer. And the answer was yes, the prophet sees and speaks with Jesus and with God.
And his besties.
Yeah, and his best friends. I was like, that's so cool. That's literally, thank you for telling me that. That's all I needed to hear.
And you mentioned that. Why? That story particularly?
Because it's just, again, this like reinforcing of there's nowhere else to go. Like
the stakes, like
just yeah, the stakes, and also just Mormonism is true. Like here we have a man telling this child that they speak and talk to God, and it's just reinforcing me in this little Mormon box of I'm never going to leave. I'm never going to think any differently than I do right now, because this is all that I need.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned that maybe some of the non-member boys you might have dated may have lost interest in you because they viewed Mormonism as a cult. How is the Mormon church viewed generally here in Tennessee or in the South, maybe?
That's what I got. We would talk for a couple days, a couple weeks, and everyone knew. Everyone
with the boy.
With the boy, yeah. Okay. Everyone knew I was Mormon. So like it was already everyone knew I was Mormon at the get-go. So it was kind of them trying to see, okay, how weird is she actually though? And it always ended within a couple weeks, because a pastor or a dad or a mom was like, you cannot make that official because she's in a cult. And because I got the horn thing several times, that we have horns, and like, and where our church building is, it's like right on the way to school. Like everyone had to pass it. And so there would be stories about seeing us out at midnight around a fire, which we might have done sometimes. We did firesides out with fires, but yeah, it just spread between these churches, that stories, like little myths.
I remember that, people believing that Mormons had horns. Yeah, no, I remember that.
Yep.
Oh, it's went around. So backing up a whole lot into when I was a youngster, this girl gave me a chain, and it had a cross on it, a little gold thing or whatever it was, as a little boyfriend thing. I take it home. It's like, look at this. My dad said, no. You have to give that back to her. We don't wear that. we're Mormons. We believe in the living Christ. And I took it back and said, I can't keep this. We don't believe in that or whatever. And so I just always thought that from then on that all of my friends just thought we were so weird and so different. But I knew I was right, and I was, and so that, you asked about how was the church viewed out here. There was another time I sang in an a cappella group with some buddies, none of them members, and we were singing at a Baptist church, and the preacher at that particular church was preaching before we sang that day. And he preached about, you might think you're going to heaven if you're Mormon, but I'm just here to tell you, that. Well, I stand up in his church in front of his congregation as an invited guest. And I said, I hate to tell you, preacher, but you're dead wrong. And if you ever want to get your facts straight, you give me a call. I think when you're in this part of the country, if you're going to truly live it and believe it, those are the types of things you do. You're giving back your gift to your little girlfriend, or you're standing up and calling people out, for preaching against you. You're putting your neck out there. You're putting yourself out there. And that's the way that I was and still am.
And that's a great story. And I relate to it growing up in Houston, Katie area as well. Katie, how did you internalize as an adolescent knowing that your church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was broadly viewed as a cult by kind of the host culture?
I think I didn't get the cult thing until high school. Elementary school I would have theological scripture debates with my friends. They would come in with sheets of paper from their Sunday school or from their dad, basically of points to make to Mormons. And I would come in with points to make to Baptists. And we would, they would ask questions and I would say, I don't know the answer to that, but my dad knows. So I'm going to go ask my dad. I would go home. I would ask him. I would write it down. I would come back. And so it was, I know I have the truth. I know I have the answers. Let me go ask my dad, because my dad has all of the answers. And there would be some times where he'd be like, oh, we just don't know. And I would, I would just not go back and tell her that was the answer. And also just, how did I internalize it? I mean, I liked him being different. And
yeah, it doesn't sound like you internalized it as you being inferior or less than.
I was there to save them. You don't know who Nephi is? Bless your heart. Let me tell you who Nephi is. I don't know. It didn't touch me in that way. It touched me in the way of, I need to help you out.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like persecution strengthens the culture, right?
Yeah. So I had a friend, a non-member friend, reach out to me probably, 10, 15 years ago or something. And he saw my young family, my kids and how happy and everything we were. And he said, I just want what you have. You're doing great. You have a family. And my response to him was, you need the church. I've credited every good thing in my life to the church. So instead of saying, well, I work hard and I have good parents or I have good work ethic or whatever, that was my response to him.
Yeah.
You need the church. The church has given me everything that I've got.
Yep. Yep. I was just going to say really quick, do you feel like growing up, being Mormon particularly, I'm trying to think when I was in Ohio and Florida, for me, like the differentness thing, I felt like actually reinforced being like a good Mormon, because we heard messages of being a peculiar people, of Yeah, not of this world. Also, it kind of ties you back to, the Mormon pioneers facing persecution. Like it kind of leads you back around to this, like, wow, I'm actually a really righteous Mormon. Like this is part of the hardcore Mormon experience. Did you guys feel that way, that there were those messages, or was that just me in Ohio and Florida? Because I do think the church is kind of different in different places, peculiar people. And also, those ties back to the pioneers and them feeling persecution and somehow that making you an even better member.
I think you're spot on. And I would say that I had the same experience, that feeling like everyone's always attacking us. I remember this analogy that I used to use. I got it actually from Truman G. Madsen, which I'll probably talk about a little bit later. But he said, if you see boys throwing rocks at a tree, you already know that that the tree has fruit on it. They're trying to knock the fruit off. And so I would say, all of these attacks at our church, it's because we have the fruit. We have the goodness. We have the truth. And so, yeah, I thought any of that, we're always being persecuted. Everyone's out to get us because we are the only true church.
Which I saw like totally illustrated when we went to the pageant, the Palmyra pageant, watching, I guess it was Book of Mormon reenactments. And so the stage is in front of you, and then behind you have all of the protesters, air horns, speakers, the picketing. And it was just like, that is the devil. Like, listen to them. Dad would say, listen to them. Like, that is, we are being persecuted. They won't let us just sit here and watch our scriptures come to life. That is Satan incarnate. I mean, that is, when you see anti-Mormon things, those are the kind of people that are putting it out.
Yeah.
No, that was the type of things we used to do as family vacations. Yep. We would go to either Nauvoo or to Kirtland and just do all of, see the pageant. And
these are church history sites where Joseph Smith used to live.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the Sacred Grove. We did all of that stuff as family. And I distinctly remember her calling out, like, tell that guy to hush, And one time,
a protester
out there. One time, she was so upset with what he was saying that I just decided, I just laid on my horn. It was like, it's like, as if that's going to, if anything, it probably drew more attention to him. But that was my best way to, take care of the situation, just drown him out.
So you mentioned in your outline stumbling on the documentary Going Clear, which is about, Scientology, which many view as a cult. So what's it like to, be in a high demand religion, to be viewed as a cult, to not think of yourself as a cult, but think of yourself as being part of the true church, but then to see a very famous cult documentary about what many perceive to be one of the prototypical cults. What was that like?
Well, I now would see that as hands off. Like, I would not have watched that if I had known. But in my mind, it was, this is good. This is not about Mormonism at all. Like, I would avoid anything Mormon in the title, because that might be a little, even if it's true believing, I'm going to avoid. So yeah, I was infatuated. Obviously, anything I am kind of interested in, like, I go full in. And so just watching this, I was really interested in these, seemingly a little crazy beliefs. Like, that's how I viewed it. And I get to the end and I'm just like, I can't believe that a human with a brain actually thinks all of these things.
Xenu, volcanoes, thetans,
yes.
whatever, auditing,
I was like,
fill in the blank.
There's no way. And then I stopped and I thought of Kolob. And I thought of, all these little kind of
Mormon teaching.
All of these little Mormon teachings that I know we teach, but we don't actually teach. And I was like,
polygamy.
Yeah, all the things. Yeah. And I was like, so anyway, this Scientology stuff is really weird. And just immediate, which I feel like is how my brain has been trained. Any thought stop, anything that could be a little, lead me down a little bit of a wrong direction, thought stop immediately.
And I think that ties back to the questions you were asking her, Margie, about self-connectedness and self-awareness versus sort of being raised to be disconnected. I mean, you're a writer, you're a poet now, but that must, I don't know, I'm curious how you reflect on this sort of childhood and adolescent indoctrination focused on keeping you disconnected from your inner self. Am I framing that right? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no other way for me to see it other than I was under some form of mind control. Because, of course, now looking back, but now I can do things that I'm using parts of my brain that I didn't even know that I had, or that I did know that I had, but I wasn't allowed to apply to church. Like, I was using critical thinking skills in all of these aspects of college and high school and Scientology. But as soon as a little Mormon element came into my mind, it was, that doesn't apply to that. That's not allowed to be used on that. That doesn't need to be used on that, because that is untouchable. And that's not anything like these other things.
Julie's asking if you remember what the protesters, what they were picketing, what they were saying, what the posters said. Do you remember?
I remember it was about Joseph Smith, just
his wives, probably
the wives.
I remember there's one guy used to go around josephlied.com, and it was like a website, and then you go to the website and it would talk about the lies that Joseph Smith told. That might have been
so. Funny story on one of the protesters. I was walking into the temple with my grandma before my mission, and there was a guy dressed up in temple clothes protesting outside in Utah. And she says, "I wish you would do this somewhere else." And he stopped protesting and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, where would you like for me to do it?" And she said, "How about at the bottom of some ocean?"
That's awesome.
I don't know. Yeah, it was some Joseph Smith related, though.
Yeah. All I can remember is Red Devil pitchforks. Like,
they were dressed. He was dressed.
No. Like, just I literally don't even remember. Normally, I would read the signs and look, but in my head, like, all I remember is like it being dark.
Evil.
And they had light. There was some sort of lights back there because, I was watching this performance on this big, cool stage, but behind me are these lights and picketing, screaming people that in my head, remembering, looking back, it was demonic.
The Hill Cumorah pageant is what she's referring to.
Total off topic, but on topic. Like, I'm curious, in the past few years, the church, those Hill Cumorah pageants, that was an important part of Mormon church culture for decades and decades and decades. And it was particularly an important way for Mormons outside of Utah to still participate in active Mormon culture in a way that's East Coast versus kind of West Coast. Do you have any theories on why the church ended the Hill Cumorah pageants and those types of things? Well, having been people that attended them and cared about them?
We took trips with our youth group, our ward growing up. We took youth conference trips. I mean, we did all that. I mean, why? Theories on why they're, I would say about the time that the introduction to the Book of Mormon changed from being the principal ancestors to being among the principal ancestors.
In response to the realization by DNA evidence that Native Americans weren't Hebrews or Israelis, but instead were Asiatic, that contradicts the core Book of Mormon narrative. So you think that?
I think that's a good chance that it had something to do with it.
So it's basically, it talked a lot about Native Americans. It told the story of the Book of Mormon, which is Jews building boats and sailing to America 600 years before Christ.
And then the other thing,
and that's science doesn't bear that
right, and science doesn't. The other thing is they're literally on the Hill Cumorah. That's where. Right. And so you start looking at all these swords and shields and you're starting.
Why are you laughing, Morgan?
I've been to it.
Yeah, so you're starting to think, well, why can't we find some of this? And you dig a little bit, and you find out, well, it's a clean hill as it's there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And I have no theories besides I remember how many protesters there were, and there were a lot of like filled the road. The road was closed off. There were cops closing. Like there were a lot of protesters. Also, the fact that they're dressing up, like they kind of have to pick, like who are you dressing up as, and what's the hair color, and like they kind of have to put a fine point on who do we think that these characters are and what did they look like. I don't think they were. Like I don't really know if they were picking certain skin colored actors but they kind of have to make a decision at that point, and just cutting it out entirely.
Such a good point.
Cutting it out entirely.
Such a good point.
Just makes it easy to gloss over the fact that we don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, the church has done that across the board. And, you know, we might be jumping ahead a little bit, but we used to know stuff. We knew where these things took place, and we knew who they were. And
we knew that Native Americans had dark skin because God cursed their ancestors for wickedness. And so in the Hinckley pageant, you would have darker skinned actors play the wicked Lamanites because that's exactly what the Book of Mormon taught. But that's also super racist. Right. And in 2020, that doesn't play like it did in 1970. Yeah. Right. Is that right? Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So just do away with it. Get rid of the whole thing.
Yeah, the less that we claim to know. But yeah, probably jumping ahead a little bit.
No, but I mean, I didn't want to come back to it. And it is weird to see the church over the decades peeling off elements of distinctive Mormon culture, because that's the type of stuff family devotion, Mormon family devotion, was often built upon. Roadshows, dance festivals, youth conferences, Hinckley pageants. Am I wrong?
That described our time as youth and growing up, and even just 10 years ago, probably.
Yep. So as I'm growing up, we're losing. I mean, we didn't have sports. We didn't. I mean, we had church. Yeah, we didn't have. I mean, we had dances. We had dances every so often, but they take away the pageant. It's boring. I remember hearing them talk back in our day. It's like, it was fun. It sounded fun. Like I would like to go play softball with these people that I live an hour and a half from. Like I would like to connect with more than just having to find a guy to dance with for this 3-minute dance. Like I didn't enjoy that. I would have enjoyed these other things. I didn't have it.
Yeah. So. Connecting to this discussion about cults and Scientology and disconnection from yourself, you mentioned in your outline learning something in your patriarchal blessing that made you feel relief. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. So a patriarchal blessing was one of the things that I felt so excited about, because it was a stepping stone. It's like, okay, I was baptized and I don't think it wasn't talked about very much, at least for me growing up. And when I found out it was a thing, I was like, okay, so what age? When am I supposed to get that? And they're like, oh, just whenever you feel ready. Okay, I'm ready. Like it now. So, I think they make you wait a certain amount of time. You have to pray, and then you have to send an email, and you have to wait. And I did all the things very quickly. And we show up, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, because I think we had talked about yours and mom's maybe, and I'm about to literally find out my future. Like, this guy's going to tell me exactly what's about to happen. And so I'm nervous a little bit, but excited also, because up until that point, I think the age change had happened for the missionaries. The female missionaries could go earlier now.
From 21 to 19.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, okay, like I think I was 14. Like I need to start making plans. But at the same time, I was like, that's terrifying. Like I could walk in here and he could tell me to go on a mission, and I have to go on a mission. And so as we got closer and closer, I was just so scared. There had been a moment where I was like, I'm going to go on a mission. But then as we got closer and closer to actually finding out whether I was going on a mission or not, where I was like, I don't know if that's for me. And sitting down and getting my 2.5-page patriarchal blessing, it talked about being a mother, finding a husband and being a mother. A couple times in the 2.5 pages. No mention of mission, which I was so relieved about. But at the same time, I was like, okay. He says I'm going to get my pick of the boys. That's how he said it. I remember Mom was so relieved, because it basically says you're going to basically pick from a pool of eligible men. And I was like, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm, coming onto the 16 age. Like, no mission. That was my ticket out.
And you felt a relief.
Yes.
Because
I don't know. It just, I've always loved listening to his mission stories, but that's a long time. It's like, and even thinking that made me feel like God would expect me to do this. But if I could just get married, then that's also my out. But the fact that he did not tell me to go on a mission in my patriarchal blessing made it easy. Was a weight lifted off my shoulders. They weren't going to push because it talks about getting married. And so I don't have to, and they wouldn't have pushed because I'm a girl and I don't, it's not expected of the girls, but.
I guess, you mentioned the teachings about the second coming and feeling lied to. You mentioned the bikinis and body shame. You mentioned stumbling on the CES letter and the Scientology thing that made you wonder whether you were in a cult for a brief moment. I wonder if there was a parallel process going on for you where you were starting to question the church a little bit and whether there was any sense of relief because maybe there's a part of you that didn't want to go sell the church or didn't feel confident selling the church to other people. I don't want to impose that on your narrative. I'm just wondering whether those data points are starting to form a line in terms of the trajectory of your faith commitment.
Well, the patriarchal blessing was when I was 14, which would have been before most of that. I don't think so at all. I think it was not wanting to leave. I've been in this Mormon Holler surrounded by family I did not want to leave that. Yeah. And I didn't want to leave my mom. And yeah, I don't think there was any part of me that I never had a shelf. I didn't know we were allowed to have shelves. So if there was any shelf, it was unbeknownst to me. Like I didn't form any negative thought against the church that I can remember, besides feeling lied to by my teachers. That wasn't, in my mind, that wasn't the church. That was just little Tennessee Mormon teachers that stepped out of line that day. Yeah.
For me, one thing that I wonder about with that is the way you describe yourself is so optimized. And here you have permission from basically God, who's speaking through the patriarch, to not have to go. It's like an out where you don't have to feel shame because you have a reason and it's from the top. Yeah.
There was no need for me to worry about something that was already decided. And in my mind, I've been preparing to be a mother. I've been preparing to get married already for these past 2 years. So why would I pause that to go do something that, number one, the men can do, or number two, the girls that are told in their patriarchal blessing to go? Like, I don't need to jump in that pool because I'm not needed, obviously.
So let's talk about dating non-members and your who would become your future husband.
Started out rough, obviously.
So you were taught not only not to date until you're 16, but what else?
I wouldn't say that I was taught not to date non-members. It was just, so I had to wait until I was 16. I told everyone I had to wait until I was 16. So there was obviously there's a religious reason that she's waiting. So she's different. So that already set me apart. I also dress differently. So if you're going to be interested in me, you're going to have to not want the norm. So
you have to earn it.
Yeah, kind of. So yeah, these boys that I would not date, I would not consider them. I wouldn't consider that I dated them, but just talked to, and then parents kind of said no. Their parents, they were always very open. I remember one time there was a boy who was like, "Mom's just not so sure. She wants you to come to our the weekly Bible studies that she does with the girls from our church." So like a vetting process, like we want to make sure that you're, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then it didn't happen because mom says no, because you're a Mormon. Yeah. No, his mom. Oh, my parents were fine with it. Oh. They because we live in an area where there's not a dating pool of Mormons. Like we'd have to drive an hour and a half to get to the nearest, ward. And even then, it's like all of those guys are going on missions and they're going out west. So for me, it honestly felt like I just need to convert somebody here. Like, so I can date a non-member, that's fine. They just need to be open. So I was also doing a vetting process of how against this are you? Because I know you're against it. Like, I know they're against it, but are you open to the fact that I'm not as weird as I may seem? And, because if there didn't seem to be any wiggle room, if I didn't think I could bring them over to the light side, then I would have said no at that point. I never got in far enough because they always had their parents to say that's not going to work. So until Ethan came along, and then he didn't have parents that said no. So that ended up progressing.
Do you want to talk about dating Ethan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we met in high school, and it was around the time my childhood home burned down, actually, in 2018, I think. And that kind of put us in contact. It was him saying, hey, sorry about what happened. And is there anything you need? And I'm not 16 yet. I think I was 3 or 4 months away from being 16. So I still had that shield, still had that out again. But we talked for a little while. They've been, they go to church, like they have been to churches, but they've never been very Baptist. They've never been they've just been to different churches. And so he didn't know what Mormon was. He didn't know. I think we asked him at one point, like, is there something different about Kayli? No, there's nothing different about her. Like, as in he thought we were asking negative. And Dad was like, oh, well, never mind. But like, I was meaning, do you see the light of Jesus in her? Like that kind of thing. And he just has always been so like, Kayli is normal. He sees me like everyone wished I would have been like my cousins. For him, I've just always been Kayli. And there's not been the Baptist boys comparing me to their Baptist, girls at their churches. Ethan has just always had a very, I don't know, unique perspective on me. I don't know, just different. It was different immediately. It felt easy immediately, besides the fact that I was like, are you sure you're interested in me? Because you have to wait 4 months for me to even be nice to you, basically, because I have to be mean because I don't want you to think I'm not 16 yet. So we're not anything in time, at least 16. And I was also kind of feeling, it feels so bad to say now, but I was filling him out to see, I need to get married in the temple. And I told him that. I had guys from the stake that I was still texting and talking to. And I told him, I said, I'm going to keep talking to them, basically, because I need a backup if you don't work out, which I've apologized so many times just going ahead and saying that.
You were 15.
Yes, I have apologized so many times. But that was important to me for him to know that I expect, if you're not converted and going on a mission and marrying me in the temple, okay, the mission thing is like, okay, I might back off on that. But like the other two things are necessary. And he knew that from the start.
Yeah, Mormon kids are taught that the most important decision you'll ever make is, who you marry, where you marry them, and you marry them at the right place at the right time. The right person at the right place at the right time, meaning they're a member, you get married in the temple, when you're worthy, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was told in my patriarchal blessing that I would have these pool of guys to choose from. So of course I, had these faithful Mormon guys that grew up in the covenant that were going to serve missions and probably move out west. And if I had to do that, I would do it. But I'd really prefer to stay with my mom. So we're going to see how this works. Mm-hmm. And I turned 16. He was 17. We were like, okay, let's start meeting with the missionaries. So like we were dating like I followed the For the Strength of Youth standards to a T, except for the fact that it's really hard to group date out in the East. So there's the rule that you're supposed to group date until you're 18. And then when you're 18, you can single date. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Not doing that. So we would one-on-one. Sometimes we would double date with my cousins or whatever, but we were dating like normal people. besides, following the other for the strength of youth standards, which he hated, but we did. And then he was also,
nothing.
Yeah, nothing's, we were basically, and he told me this several times. He's like, I basically just feel like I'm your friend. I'm like, well, you're my best friend. Like, I don't have any other friend. Like you're
my very special friend.
Yeah. And that was the only time we would fight. I would be sobbing my eyes out in the car because he'd be like, I just want to be like
make out, right?
I just want to be like your boyfriend. I want to be closer to you. And I'm like, well, sorry, this is as close as we're getting. I felt bad then, but there was, I want to be close to you too. But there's this thick of a book between us for the strength of youth standards that lists it out and makes it easy for me. So I'm sorry that you feel that way, but, which looking back now is he was trying to voice a need and a want. And like I did the entire time we dated, I just kind of put my needs above his and the church above his needs, because that's what comes first, always.
There's an argument that that's good. It kept you from having unwanted, child pregnancies or whatever, right?
That's true. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's probably a healthier way to go about it, and I don't know what it is, but I was policing myself. I was policing him. It shouldn't have worked out. It really, he's just an angel and perfect, and so everything worked out. But any sane human probably would have been like, you're a nut job. This is too much. He didn't grow up very religious. He didn't grow up with rules. So I think he saw the rules like, okay, these are good. Like, I see her, she's great. Like, I love who you are, and I love the person you've become. So, okay, the rules are obviously good. He sees our family, and he wants that. He wants the family that my dad has, and he wants the success that my dad has, and he idolizes my dad. And so obviously when Nathan says it's time for him to meet with the missionaries, okay, it's time for me to meet with the missionaries.
How did he like the teachings of the Mormon missionaries?
Well, it was sister missionaries.
Oh.
So they were awesome. They were so sweet. They were also very, very pushy. I think it was the first meeting that it was, okay, let's set a date. And I'm like, his baptism. And
the first time they met with him.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa. And Dad's like, no, it's good. But I just was very stunned. Like, this has taken me 19, 18 years. I don't know how old I was. 16 years to be so sure about all of this stuff. And you're expecting him to tell you a date before we've even, I think we said the prayer. Like we might have been 30 minutes. I don't know. And I'd never been in a conversion, like a convert meeting or whatever, the lessons that they do. I'd never been in that position before. So it was very strange. And I did see it at the time that it was very pushy, even then. But
how long did he take the discussions for?
We took them for, we did a few lessons, and then it ended up being that his dad wanted him to wait to make the decision until he was 18. So we waited a year. And then I think it was 3 months after he turned 18, we finished the lessons, and he got baptized in October 2020.
And did he ever express concerns about the teachings or doubts or issues with?
He was very concerned about the idea of a patriarchal blessing, would not get on board with it. And I was like,
what was his concern?
Nobody can speak for God. I would try to I didn't want to read it to him because we're not married yet, and you're not supposed to show it to anybody but your spouse. But I was trying to explain, no, it's coming true. See, I'm picking you, and I'm going to be nothing had come true yet. But there were things in my patriarchal blessing that I was like, it said I had the gift of discernment, and my entire childhood, I was very apt to pick out people not to trust, and ended up being, I think it says that you'll know good people from evil people or something like that. And I believed that I could do that. And so it was almost like I was given these little magical gifts, and I saw them happening in my life. And I was trying to tell him, no, you have to believe in a patriarch because you have to believe in this hierarchy of power and of, he did not get on board with that. And we just stopped talking about it at that point because I was like, okay, let's not talk about your questions because we need you to get baptized. And if you have questions, that's not going to lead to baptism. So we have to just be quiet about
Let me help you thought stop you.
Yes, exactly. Let me teach you this thing I've been learning since I was a toddler. Yes.
Meaning thought stopping.
Yes. Yeah. Just
it's infectious.
Just mind. Let me give you a little bit of my mind control. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's loosely called flirt to convert. That you weren't doing that. You were looking for your eternal companion. But that's one of the major ways people join the church in Mormonism is they either see they have a really, let's just say, unhealthy or dysfunctional or lonely or isolated upbringing, and they see a really solid Mormon family and they say, I want that type of family, or they meet some cute girl or boy who's Mormon, and then they take the discussions because they know it's joining the church is part of the conditions for marriage. It's especially in quote the mission field. This is very, very normal, important stuff for how the church grows outside of Utah.
Right.
I think. And how Mormons find mates in places where there aren't a lot of Mormons to date, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different reality than in Utah or Idaho or Arizona, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially when half of the Mormon population in our ward is going out west, like
to BYUs.
Yeah, and so for me, it was kind of, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to put all my eggs in this basket when all of the chickens were going to fly away when they turned 18. Like I don't know. It was imperative that I find somebody that was willing to convert for me. And
you didn't want to go to the BYUs?
No.
Why was that?
I had, besides the like idolizing these girls that lived in Utah and like how they looked and things like that, I was very much against going to BYU. And I think I probably called the BYU Mormons fake Mormons more often than I didn't. And I just was anytime somebody's like, oh, are you going to BYU? No. Why would you even ask me that? Like, I don't need that. I can be different here. I don't need to go assimilate into BYU culture when I'm doing just fine right here in Tennessee.
Yeah, a lot of times Mormons in Utah are just going along with it because it's what everyone does versus in the quote mission field, you have to figure out it's true because it's a commitment and it's not what everyone else is doing. Yep. And so there's no way you don't just go with the flow in the mission field. You're going always against the flow.
Mm.
Right.
And so you got to believe it because it takes effort to swim against the flow. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we have to drive 30 minutes to our ward building. We have to drive an hour to an hour and a half to activities in, Knoxville. And it's just at every point there's a hurdle and we're willing to make the jump. Whereas I feel like I've never lived in Utah, but I feel like it's much easier to just exist as a Mormon in Utah.
So Ethan got baptized. Who baptized him?
This great guy right here.
Is there anything worth mentioning about Ethan's conversion and baptism?
Just that his family has been, they obviously saw what I was doing, but they obviously saw that we loved each other. And Ethan had made it clear very early on that he was going to marry me to his dad. I later find out. And that if this is what he has to do it, he's going to do it because he wants to be with me and he wants the life that I want and that I expect us to have.
I just have a quick question. Did Ethan ever Google Mormonism at all? Or
so he did, but I was always over his shoulder saying, don't believe that. That's a lie. Or I think there were some people, his dad was maybe going to church at that point who had met a man who had been Mormon or dated somebody that was Mormon and knew all of the secrets. And Ethan's dad really wanted him to meet with him. And I was like, you can, but I'm just going to tell you right now, he's under the influence of Satan. So just know going into it that he's going to tell you a bunch of lies. And of course he didn't meet with him because I'm sitting here telling him all of the true things and so I'm just now looking back and seeing Ethan's dad being like, done all I can do. And they're good people. So, okay, but you'll figure it out on your own.
So do you think Ethan's parents were thinking we're losing our son to a cult? Do you think they were thinking that?
I wasn't privy to the conversations, the screaming fights that they had about it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and they knew me and they knew that which is why it hurt my feelings so much when I would know that the conversations were happening. Cause I'm like, you all like me. Like I'm normal. I'm not, I don't have horns, which they knew I didn't, but they were hearing all these things from like, if it's not true, it's not true. And if you have to do all these crazy rules and not drink coffee and do, meet all these standards that are just arbitrary, like why do that? But if it's going to make you a better person, okay, then you can, like that kind of thing. So it wasn't the end of the world for him specifically because he saw Ethan becoming a better person. I think that's what Ethan would say anyway. As he was dating me, he was implementing these rules that I was kind of forcing onto him, and he saw himself as becoming better. And so in that way, no harm, no foul, I guess, in his dad's mind.
As far as you know, when Ethan decides to get baptized, is it in his mind, oh, yep, I prayed, I got a witness from the Holy Ghost, I know the church is true, and so I'm now joining the one true church because I believe it? Or is it like, I don't know all about all this stuff, but I love Kayli, and so I'm gonna do it, even though I don't really believe it, but I just got to do it because that's the way that we get to get married. Do you know which way it was, or something in the middle?
Yeah, something in the middle. It was a lot of Nathan is smart, and he's basically teaching me these lessons, and he knows it all, and it makes sense when he tells me all these things. So
you were a person, Nathan. You had become a person of influence and authority. A bishop is kind of like a priest or a pastor. Right. That's a high level position of authority in the church.
Yeah.
And you would have not only been a bishop, but now you're in the stake, which is an even higher position of authority. And so you were helping teach Ethan.
And I think what she said was probably right, that he saw us as a functioning, loving family, that things were going great. And so I would have to say that his parents saw that also and said, even though they have maybe crazy beliefs, they're still good people. And
so it was a healthy lifestyle, a girl he loved, a family that was great. And, we'll see in the future how much his beliefs grow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Really quickly, before we talk about your engagement, how was your testimony doing through all this? You talk about some stagnation. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I would always have my mom checking in. I was juggling early morning seminary and basketball and softball and high school and college credits and all these things. And she would check in and say, how's your testimony? Because I wouldn't get up and bear my testimony for a testimony meeting just because I have stage fright and I do not like to do that. But she would check in when that would happen, and I would, fine, Mom. Like, there was no reason for me to actively search things out. Like, I went to church on Sunday. I went to, while I was still in youth, I went to activities on Wednesday, and there was nothing extra that needed to be done. Like, I could go read conference talks, but like, that's just another thing to add to my plate. Like, I was comfortable in the stagnation. It didn't feel negative to me. It felt like I'm safe here. I trust what I'm being told on Sundays. That's really all that I knew existed. Like, I didn't know there was anything deeper to be. Like, I went to Palmyra. I went to all of these places. Like, I know church history. Like, there's nothing else for me to learn. There's nowhere for me to grow to. Like, I'm going to these classes I'm supposed to be going to. I'll go to the temple at some point. But for now, like, I know all that I need to know. I know all that there is to know. So I don't feel like I need to get up every fast and testimony meeting and say the same thing over and over again. I'm good.
Okay. So no big doubts, weighing on you, no shelf, so to speak, devout, committed, scrupulous, Orthodox, believing Mormon, daughter of a former bishop, converted your high school boyfriend, ready to get married to the right person at the right place at the right time. Is that right?
The only doubt or worry that ever comes in is when I get engaged and see the temple in the future and get really, really nervous about what the heck I'm going to find in there, because that's the only thing that I can't seek out because I can't Google it, obviously. they're not talking about it. All I can do is go to temple prep, and that was on the calendar.
So do you want to talk about your engagement then? Is that next step?
Yes.
Okay.
His next steps.
All right.
Just that he had proposed.
You were how old?
19.
So you were out of high school.
Yep. In college. He had graduated with his associate's degree, so he was about to start his job. He had wanted to propose in high school. Like, he was sure years before. And I said no. I said, wait. There was also the question of mission. Like, maybe you'll get a prompting. Maybe you'll go get your patriarchal blessing like I've been telling you to do. And he'll tell you need to go on a mission. And in that case, we can't be engaged. Like, there's always that chance. But he wouldn't get his patriarchal blessing. So I was finally like, okay, yeah, like that's next steps then. And he ended up proposing, and we were ready to start making temple plans.
So you were like, I found the right guy. So if he doesn't go on a mission, I still want to do it.
Yeah. I've never thought that I have to have a return missionary. And I think I had actually seen in my personal life, or in family life anyway, that they're not always the best. Like, they're not perfect. Return missionaries are not perfect. And if Ethan is willing to do all this extra work, it kind of equates to a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's always a chance we can go when we're older.
I am trying to imagine dating a Mormon girl as a never Mormon, and then even converting to the church, but going 2 or 3 or 4 years dating this person and obeying the law of chastity the whole time. Was that just something y'all did, or was that a struggle?
I think in those couple of years, like graduating high school and then in preparation for getting married, I had a lot of panic attacks, and always around the topic of sex. And it was always not him asking to do that, just to be closer, to kiss a little bit longer than a second, Kayli, like little tiny things. And I kept saying, like, if you push me one little, like, if we kiss now, then there goes that first, and then that won't be special anymore. And then the same thing with having sex. It's like, I want things to be special, and I want them to happen in the order that they're supposed to happen. So I remember we didn't kiss for a long time, because I was like, that's, like, it's a thing that you do at some point, and then it just becomes a thing you do. Like, it's like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And it had to be pushed down the way, because I knew I had to wait till I was married to do anything more than that. So it's like, we had to wait 2 years to kiss, because that's, I want you to be interested in me for the long haul. And if we kiss now, then you're not going to be interested in me, because I'm going to make you wait, that kind of thing. Yeah. I was hardcore.
Yeah. Okay. So we've established, I feel like, a disconnect, right? That you feel probably in retrospect now, right? To yourself, kind of, to your body, to your inner kind of self, so I guess my question is, as you're dating, do you notice that you have sexual feelings, or are you still disconnected? Is it still a little bit more like a dissociated state of like, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do, here's what but you're not really in your body about it. Does that make sense? Yeah. And policing him.
It's very, very much so. I would even say like a dissociative state. Like, when I would have these panic attacks, I would be like out of body and like, I can't think of the word now, like spinning. And I don't know, there's probably psychology behind it, but like we would be taught, as people do, like about the future or about whatever, about being intimate. And I would totally shut down. Like, that's a conversation for later. There's no point in talking about it now, because first of all, you're stressing me out. You're making me talk about my body, which is not something I'm comfortable doing. And he was the most, like, it's such a normal topic. He thinks you can just talk about that, and he should have been able to. It should have been something you talk about before you get married. But I just couldn't, physically couldn't, mentally couldn't. I don't know I don't know.
That is kind of an extraordinary story because I think the norm is that kids fudge or they goof up or they,
Not
you
with
know,
Kayli.
yeah, because she's kind of perfectionistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and all of that, I mean, I feel like it's just self motivated or whatever. Like we didn't, we would have been okay with a B or whatever. Like she did that. She got herself up for seminary. She drove off in the morning with, snow on the ground and there was a couple times I remember thinking, why am I letting my daughter drive off in a foggy morning? Because she's not going to miss, even though she had a basketball game the night before and didn't get home until midnight, she's getting herself up for early morning seminary. That's how she's always been.
I mean, I think on some level, there's this idea of like the hustle. You're hustling for your worth. You're hustling for your value, and it becomes this cycle, right? You're only as good as the last good, perfect thing you did. Mm. And I think that's one aspect of this. I'm curious though, if psychologically there's this torture also that you're having to live up to this standard that you are feeling driven to, right? So I guess, are you having an experience of like something existential of like what's at stake? Like when you're getting up, you're doing all this hustle and you're having panic attacks. When you're talking about your body and now you're in relationship with someone, do you remember feeling this sense of like, I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But like this, it feels desperate. It feels like there's so much at stake at every moment, in every decision. There's just so much at stake. Are you feeling that?
I think I write in my outline that I was living with the question of temple worthiness in the back of my head always. So from the first time that I took a temple recommendation, met with the bishop, and he asked me the questions, I cataloged them in my brain. When I was 8, how old would I have been? 12? Yeah, 12. Mm-hmm. And from that time on, every decision I made was, okay, so I get paid for doing yard work or something. If I'm not paying my tithing, my 10 cents of tithing or whatever, the next Sunday, then technically my answer to, are you a full tithe payer is no. And I would not get into the temple, which means I would not get into the celestial kingdom. And so it was the same thing with the question of the law of chastity. Am I living the law of chastity? Well, Ethan, when you're asking me these questions and making me think about something inappropriate, then no, I'm not. That's technically impure thoughts, which is would not pass on a temple worthiness interview.
Right. So it kind of feels like it's salvation or not. Yes. It's binary. It's like I am saved and exalted, or in the celestial kingdom, which makes you, more apt to be with your family versus not.
Which was reinforced when my sister was stillborn. And so I have a sister waiting for me in the celestial kingdom. So every decision that I make, my mom and dad are going to be there. They're going to be there with their daughter, with Paisley. So every decision I make either keeps me with them or it separates me from them, because even the next level down is not good enough. Definitely not good enough for me. So.
Did we talk about that stillbirth? Did we?
No, we haven't. Oh. So that was in 2011.
What number in the birth order was that child?
So she would have been before. So we have 4 kids, and she would have been the 4th, and then our youngest son would have been the 5th. So yeah, so
younger, it would have been a younger sister to you, Kayli.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
And you were how old, Kayli, when the baby was stillborn?
And it was 2011.
So. Oh no! Don't make me do math.
How old are you? What year were you born?
2003.
So that's 8 years. You're 8 years old, baptism age when
because I wore
your sister died.
I wore my baptism dress to her funeral. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was that like? So like this is kind of Saturday's Warrior stuff of like these spirits that are supposed to come to earth and inhabit the bodies. And so there's a spirit. Did you believe that there was a spirit up in heaven named Paisley, who came to the fetus and was there, but then the fetus died. And so Paisley wasn't going to get her mortal experience, but she was going to be an exalted being in heaven, and y'all would all live worthy to be with Paisley someday. Was that an important part of your family culture?
That was. And that was our belief and our feeling. I just, not too long ago, I was watching back some video footage because you guys know I'm in the videography business. And so all of this stuff was recorded with, funerals and talking. And I used to love this analogy, which I talked about a lot as bishop, but also at her funeral, where I would take a long string and just put one little knot right in the middle of it, and so everything on this side of the string is pre-earth life, and this earth life is this knot, but all of this to come. And so everything depends on this life, and we can be with.
It's a blip. This life is but a blip.
It doesn't matter what we can just get through it and suffer whatever we have to do. And so I talked about that at her funeral, and it was a time I think that our family we became a lot closer, and but probably it also added a lot of stress or a lot of weight on making sure we do the right things to be with her.
Because Kayli, that's the most emotional you've been in the interview, just mentioning Paisley.
Yeah.
So was she always with you in a sense in your mind?
When I would pray, I would do a prayer to God, obviously, but in it, I would talk to her. And so there was just another thing that I was putting above myself, that I was trying to attain, that I was trying to reach. I have this sister that was too good to come to earth. God needed her too much. But I'm here. He didn't need me. But it's just another element to this needing to live up to this unattainable picture of my sister that I don't even know what color her hair was. Like, I don't know anything about her. But over the past however many years, she's been somebody I prayed to. So sorry.
No.
So wow. a year after that is when I was called to be bishop.
Yeah. And where did this idea come from that she was taken?
Okay.
She was taken because she was so good. She didn't even need to come to earth. Where did that idea come from?
I mean, it was my first dealing with a death. So it might have been in conversations with my parents, or just she was my one chance at a sister. I have 3 brothers now. And so it's me trying to deal with, why did God not give me a sister? And I guess we came to the conclusion that they just really need her to do work in heaven right now. And God needs her more than you need her. As much as you need a sister, God needs her more than you all do, than my mom, than my dad, than we need her.
And also that you felt inferior to her because she was chosen to stay with God and you weren't.
And I don't know that I've ever even conceptualized that until just now, but it obviously was in my head because I just said it. So
yeah.
I don't know.
And then you see in fiction, or in real life, someone having a teddy bear that they talk to, or a guardian angel, or a friend, I don't want to say imaginary friend to belittle it, but someone you can pour your heart out to and tell everything to. It sounds like she may have played that role for you, or just the idea of her.
Yeah.
She was real to you. Is that right?
Yep. I would have dreams. I don't know if she had blonde hair, but in my dreams she had blonde hair. So just, I don't know. I've had a sister. When people ask how many siblings I have, I say 4. So.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's sensitive stuff. So you got engaged. Is it okay if we jump now back to Nathan?
Yes. Please.
You ready?
Yep.
So Nathan, you were bishop and in the stake high council. You know, you never imagined anyone ever in your family having questions and doubts about the church, and it was going to be smooth sailing to the celestial kingdom. What the freak happened? What the freak happened, Bishop Hinckley?
The first thing that happened was my sister and her husband and her family stepped away from the church. I was bishop. And
so what year was that? We would have talked about that last episode, but you were bishop when Lindsay and
I was
Todd...
bishop, so it would have been 2000, maybe 15.
And how did you deal with that?
It was devastating, you know, just devastating why you would give up the one true church and change some aspects of your lifestyle. And I just remember I had to speak all the time. People would not show up. So, of course, the bishop will fill the time. I just remember bearing testimony and talking all the time about staying close to the trunk of the tree. And I just assumed that they started dabbling, you know, in
coffee or
deep doctrine or whatever, that kind of stuff, okay. You know, just staying close to the faith and repentance, you know. And
did they try and talk to you? I reading through having interviewed them, they were starting to have doctrinal questions first. Did they try to talk to you about those before they ever left the church and lost their faith?
So we really didn't have that many conversations about doctrinal issues.
Wonder why they wouldn't come to you if y'all were so close.
Well, I was not willing to consider any of the things that we called anti.
So if they're questioning things, they wouldn't have probably felt safe to come to you because you were as hardcore as Kayli.
Yeah.
Maybe, right?
And the only thing that I kept telling them that I recommended, and I recommended the thing that helped me the most, which was to listen to the Truman G. Madsen lectures on Joseph Smith. I loved them. I listened to them before my mission. I listened to them after. I memorized them. I gave sponsored firesides about all of this information, the little details that a lot of people didn't know about the Kirtland Temple and all of these things. I mean, I just absolutely loved them. And so I would send them, you know, it wasn't really a podcast at that time, but the links to that, and just listen to this, and this will show you that this church is true and all this.
It basically makes Joseph Smith seem like Jesus, you know, like the most righteous, courageous, faithful human that's ever lived. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was a blow to me, to our family. You know, all of a sudden we had, you know, this part of the family that we would get together, and now we weren't all members, and there was this little bit of tension about church and things. And you know, there was even there's kind of like this ricochet bounce back effect, whatever you want to call it, where we all kind of doubled down. We created a Facebook group amongst ourselves without her that we could share conference talks and things.
Like a faithful Hinckley family members.
Right. We're the good ones. I mean,
and Lindsay was cut out of that. Lindsay and Todd were cut out of it.
Yeah.
But she didn't know that group existed.
Yeah. Which I wasn't part of creating it, but I was included in it. And it was just simply, we want to talk about church stuff. She doesn't. So, you know, this is where we'll do it.
So to be clear, it wasn't that you were talking about her.
No.
The thread. It was literally more.
Here's a conference talk I really like. You guys, you know, let's all read this and listen to it or whatever. So
I see.
But as the person who's, you know, no longer believing, to know that the family created this group that they didn't tell you about, that they're all having communications with, can feel terrible, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that was the first kind of hit to the family, and not so much to me. Like, I doubled down as far as the church is concerned. Now,
Did you treat them worse? Did you treat them in a condescending way? Did you treat them as inferior?
I did.
You did?
I feel like, I feel like I treated them worse than anyone in the family. I don't know. To hear them say it, they have told me, you treated us exactly like you would if you truly believe what you believe.
Because they're giving up eternal salvation and breaking the family unity in the celestial kingdom. Why wouldn't you be severe in how you view them and in how you treat them? Because what else? There's no higher stakes, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember telling my wife, basically saying, Todd is not a man of his word, because I know the things that he promised with the priesthood and the temple and things, and he's going against it.
He's a covenant breaker.
He's a covenant breaker.
Yeah.
I was pretty harsh.
This probably is why she did not come to you. Back to that question earlier. It's beginning to make sense.
Yeah. I feel like I was probably the roughest one in the family.
Judgmental, condescending, short, distant, all those things. Is that fair?
I think so.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately. Coupled with that, I have
Wait, Katie, what did you think about Lindsay and Todd leaving the church?
It was kept very hush-hush.
Oh, okay.
I think they finally told me, and it was still even then like, I never asked why. Like, I didn't want to know why Aunt Lindsay had left. Like,
it doesn't seem like they were like blabbing all over the world about it.
No.
Well, and also, we know that it was communicated to them explicitly not to talk about it, not to
by stake leadership.
And by my dad.
Yeah. Right. Because it was perceived as a threat.
As a threat.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
do not tell the other kids.
That's right.
These things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they're going through really hard stuff, having no one to talk to, feeling isolated, feeling judged, and they just have to stay silent or go find other friends, because the people that should be there for them, the people that should be most supportive, the people they love most, are all like judging them and isolating them and wanting little to nothing to do with them.
Yeah. And they did not speak out. They didn't post things online. Like I remember that they did. Lindsay had just posted this poem that she had found that was like, what if God is just this good feeling that we have? And what if it was just kind of like this what if type thing.
Yeah.
And she got attacked. She just got attacked.
It wasn't like Joseph's a pedophile.
No. It was like, what if
poem.
Church is just, a community
Nature,
or whatever. Yeah.
What if God or church is a tree on a sunny day?
Yeah.
Or a bird singing from a...
You can't say that.
Not gonna
say that.
So not only did they leave, but I don't know if it was before or after, but it was a very close family on my wife's side he was also a bishop named Nathan, same stake. In my opinion, so much more sincere, soft-spoken, and just genuine, just beautiful family. Just as heartfelt, like to hear him speaking at church or in one of our meetings. It's like, love to hear him, just the most sincere guy. And I think it was before Lindsay. At any rate, they were pretty close with each other. They left. And I heard about it, and I called or texted him. I'm like, dude, what did I just hear? And later I found out I was the only one that ever reached out to him.
Yeah.
But so he just said, thanks for reaching out, but we're just dealing with some things.
So the dominoes in Knoxville are starting to fall.
Yep.
And they're close to the family.
Yeah. And so the one other thing that happened is I was bishop, and I was selected randomly among bishops by church headquarters to take a survey. Did I cut you off earlier, by the way?
No.
Okay. To take a survey. So they said, hey, Bishop Hinckley, you've been selected to take this survey. And it was regarding the gospel topic essays, which had just, recently come out. And it said, can you fill out this information? I kind of treated it like it was going to be a review on a blender or something, like, oh, it's great, check and go on. No, it was very in-depth. It said, okay, Bishop Hinckley, did you read the essay titled, Race in the Priesthood? Yes or no? If you click yes, what did you think about, what did you think about it? What feedback do you have? Like, they wanted long, detailed answers. If you click no, it said, why did you not read it? And it prompted you to read it, just very detailed. Next question. Did you read the gospel topic essay on Joseph's, polygamy and, all of the topics? And I started to see some of these topics that I had heard, both of these two families, through the gossip that they were sort of having. So
you hadn't read the gospel topics essays as a bishop when they came out?
No, not only I didn't know they existed.
How did you not know they didn't exist if the church is putting them out?
Yeah, we were never told. We were never advised. Hey, bishops, just want you to know that this is out there. You might have members. No, I had never had any members come to me. I was never given any instruction from stake leaders, from anyone, until I get a survey asking me what I think about them.
Because the church didn't want to spread the doubt virus by telling all their leaders that these essays existed, but they needed the essays to be there to answer the questions of people having doubts, and also so that they could have plausible deniability that they were no longer deceiving or hiding things from questioning or doubting members. So, and the church is on record stating that they intentionally did not let bishops and leaders and even the general membership know these essays existed. They intentionally did the soft backdoor release of them.
So that planted a seed. I didn't read some of them. Some of them I was like, I really don't. I don't want to know what's going on with this. So I would fast forward until one time I was having a little bit of a debate, argument, whatever, with Todd, my brother-in-law, and we were talking about polygamy.
You were no longer a bishop at this point.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have always considered myself a Joseph Smith expert. And I gave the firesides and, like everyone thought, oh, Nathan, he knows all about it. Well, we were talking about polygamy. Now, Todd and Lindsay, for a time, they were very much in the Joseph didn't do it camp regarding polygamy.
So did they kind of go down the Denver Snuffer route a little bit?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, for those who don't know, the Denver Snuffer route is Joseph Smith was a prophet, but then Brigham Young kind of, after Joseph died, Brigham Young kind of goofed it up. So everything Joseph taught was good, but everything after it's bad. And then part of that is that Brigham Young started the polygamy, but Joseph, a man of God, would have never had anything to do with polygamy.
Right.
And you should seek to get a personal witness with Jesus yourself. That's the other part of the Snuffer crowd.
Yeah.
So the McCormicks went down the Snuffer route. I think I got a sense from that from their outline.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I won't speak for them entirely, but they were definitely in the Joseph didn't do it camp for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, we were discussing polygamy and I was still under the impression that Joseph taught it, Brigham lived it. That was kind of my way that I would have explained it, polygamy. Well, Todd says, I don't know about that. You might want to check with your church about that. And to have someone that has left the church, who I clearly know much more about the church because I'm still in it, tell me you might want to check with your church on that. That was a low blow. That was what, honestly, my wife and I, we've talked about this because we have promised each other that we would never look at this stuff that's taking these families away. Like promise me, like all we want is to get our kids to the temple on missions, married, that's all we want. We promised me you'll never look. Yeah, we had. But, I think that was one of the things to have him just kind of say, I don't know, you might want to check with your church. I'm like, what do you mean check with my church on that? Well, now we know that in the gospel topic essays, the church tells us that Joseph did live polygamy, and he had, I don't even remember how many wives, and they
34.
Yep. And there were some that were already married, and there were some that were very, very young, and, just all of these details.
14 years old. Yeah. Okay. So when he says you ought to go read some stuff, number one, you took that as kind of insulting. But number two, it sounds like you decided to take him up on the challenge.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
So you go to read the Gospel Topics essays on Joseph Smith's polygamy and
was floored.
Because what?
I was floored because I found out that, number one, what I had always been taught, that Joseph kind of maybe taught it, but Brigham lived it, was not accurate. Not only that, in the essays, we learned that it says that the church basically says that Brigham Young gave into the racist teachings of the time, which is a nice way to say he was racist. So to me, the gospel topic essays were basically saying Joseph was a liar. And what I mean by that was because he's on record saying that people say I have seven
More
wives.
than one wives.
Yeah,
whatever,
but I can find only one. He's on record saying I have one, yet the church is telling me that he had 33.
Yeah.
So that is lying.
Yeah.
So I'm dealing with this man that if you would have asked me 3 years ago, name one person you'd love to meet from the past, hands down, Joseph Smith, no questions asked. I mean, I loved the stories and I love the guy. And now I'm starting to find this stuff out. And I'm starting to realize that Truman G. Madsen, he knew all of this stuff, but he didn't say these things that are,
he left those out of his
tapes.
Yeah.
So
but also you're learning that the church hid stuff or misled you, and also that Todd, the apostate, knew more than you about your own church.
And so I pick up the phone.
What was that like?
That was devastating. So I pick up the phone, and my first phone call was to Nathan, the other bishop I just told you about.
The one who had left earlier.
Yeah. And I said, dude, what is going on? And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, I'm starting to see some stuff here, and I think you and I might need to talk. And I was at work, and we just barely started to scratch the surface, and my wife showed up. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I got to go, because I hadn't told her yet either. I was like, he said, so Amy doesn't know anything? I was like, no. So I find right after that, I find a chance to talk to Amy. And I said, I just read about this thing, with Fanny Alger. And I start to explain this story that I'm hearing, which is on the church website. And the story, the basic 10-second version. So the basic 10-second version is that she was a helper in the house, young teenage girl, and that she was that Joseph and her were caught in the barn and in a compromising situation, and that there were excommunications that happened over this Oliver Cowdery, who accused Joseph of adultery, who rightly accused Joseph of adultery. He was excommunicated. Yeah. Yeah. So I start to tell her this story. Well, her face goes numb. And she's like, I already know this story. Well, she had come across it, I think, when I was on my mission doing some research on something for her schooling. And she brought it to some of her leaders or whatever, and she was assured that it was anti-Mormon lies. Don't worry about that. There's nothing to that. And I'm like, honey, it's on the church website. Like, you could pull this up. They're saying it's true. And we're just, oh my gosh. We are just starting to scratch.
Was she concerned, or was she disbelieving?
There was not much time where we were not on the same page. Like, as soon as I kind of said that, she's like, I already know this story.
And she was disturbed by it?
She was disturbed to find out that it was true, because she was assured that it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so
she's feeling betrayed like you.
Yeah. And another few days went by. I called that same Nathan back. I said, hey, I talked to my wife and we're on the same page. I said, but where do I go from here? And he says, look, all I can tell you is I listen to podcasts. And he says, have you ever heard of this or that? Mormon Stories was one of them. I said, no, and he says, it's a good place. He says, it's a good place to start, and just, go wherever your interest takes you. So yeah, I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing, what I was working on when I heard some of these first podcasts of Mormon Stories. Like the Donna Showalter, that one for me was just, she was wrestling with this situation of trusting the prophets. She had the interaction with Holland,
yeah,
and she wanted him to bless her son, who was gay, and basically fix him.
Elder Holland.
You're an apostle. You're telling me this is a sin. He needs to be fixed. And cure him. And him saying, I can't do. Just an amazing. I mean, love that one.
Yeah.
And then definitely. Took some notes somewhere here. Oh, the Tom Phillips and Hans Matson, whatever it was.
Second Anointing.
Oh my gosh, that just floored me to hear how this. I had heard of this Second Anointing, calling in election made sure. I had heard these rumors, and we used to, on my mission, if we wanted to break the rules, we would find someone's edition of Mormon doctrine and read about it, about this Second Anointing. So I had sort of heard of these things. I won't jump ahead, but Kayli, that was one of the things she was really disturbed with later on, to find out, what is this? Like, she called it a good old boys club. It's like, this is just a good old boys club where, so yeah, to Tom Phillips' interview, I remember exactly what I was doing. I was like, I cannot believe what I'm hearing. And he just seemed so honest and sincere. And that's what kept striking me. Like, I was taught that this anti-Mormon stuff was evil and, was the pitchforky stuff that people were yelling. And it's like, no, these are honest, good, sincere people. And I believe what they're saying. And so I start having this major struggle, like, Kayli's wedding's coming up. I've got 3 boys, younger than her. Missions are coming up. And I was like I didn't know where to go. I, much like Kayli, obsess about anything I do. If I'm into whitewater kayaking, that's all I think about. If I'm into, some construction job that I'm doing, that's all I think about. Well, I obsess with it. So I'm like, this is blowing my mind. Like, I need to know what is true, what I've been lied to about. And so it was nonstop. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I wasn't eating. I was obsessing. And I'm just trying to get all my, because this time of my life, it's kind of a fog,
What's the time frame particularly on this like acute phase of just not eating, not sleeping, like clearly just really disruptive to your life. How long is this lasting?
So, okay, so this goes on for a good few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, until we finally get to where we say we need to talk to Kayli. Because she's planning her wedding. She's got this brand new, newly baptized boyfriend, fiance. So we're like, we're going to have to talk to Kayli. And so I tell her to come by my job. My wife's there with me. And shoot. So we sit in my truck. I'm in the driver's side. Her and Ethan are in the back. My wife's in the passenger side. I just start bawling. It felt like 30 minutes, but maybe it was 5 or 10. I couldn't say anything. And she's like, what is going on? Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, finally, I think she says, are you and mom getting a divorce?
Because she had why Kayli? Why is that what you went to?
Because he's in shambles. I've never seen him cry before, like where there seems to be something wrong. Like I've seen him, get emotional in church or whatever. I don't know, the picture of them sitting like apart, the fact that we were sitting in the truck, like there was this weird kind of divide between them. I was like, I don't know. Like there's that's all I can think of. He said, no, you're not getting divorced. I said, okay. Like my next thing is, did you gamble away all of your money? Like I'm going through the things that like maybe the church would not be okay with. I'm like, okay, divorce. Maybe he cheated or gambling. That's not good either. Are you drinking coffee? Like gambling was the next thing. I was like, I have no idea what's going on right now.
So finally I get myself together and I say, it's about church. She's like, and I said, and I've said this 1,000 times since then, I don't think the church is what we thought it was. And she immediately puts up her blockers that we taught her.
Yeah, it was my turn to be crying. I cried for, like, before even getting any words out, I was in tears for a couple of minutes and then said, you know what I'm thinking. I'm thinking exactly what I'm supposed to be thinking, that even in the last days, even the most elect will be deceived. And I think that might be what's going on right now. Before he even gets any other words out, before he lists anything out, before he tells me any of his reasons, it's that mind control coming back into play.
So then I finally say, well, just let me share some stuff that I've kind of found out. And one of the things that bothered me the most was regarding the Book of Mormon. And I feel like even to this day that the correlation between the late war and the Book of Mormon and how there's so many phrases and things that match in both books. To explain what I mean, in Tennessee, we're known as the Vols. You heard that? Tennessee Volunteers?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that comes from the War of 1812, where they asked for people to serve in this war. Well, in the late war,
it's a book that Joseph Smith had access to.
The late war, which is a book that Joseph Smith had access to, there's terminology that matches 2,000 hardy men, like 2,000 stripling warriors who fought with dauntless courage in the late war. In the Book of Mormon, who were valiant for courage. In the late war, they were a small band of hardy men. In the Book of Mormon, they were a little band of young men who fought desperately in the late war, who fought most desperately. I'm starting to show Kayli, and if you can spend an hour looking at all of these things, I'm like, it matches identically all of these 3 and 4 word phrases with the Book of Mormon. I'm just starting to show her that.
And plot structure, but also it's in King James English.
I mean, there's
So the these and it came to pass is sort of like language. You could pick passages from the late war, read it to a Mormon, and they would think you were reading them the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Fair? Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, since then I've studied it a lot more, but at the time I'm just starting to show her like these problems. And so for me, the Book of Mormon was one of the major first problems. The polygamy stuff also. But I don't even know that we got into polygamy during that.
I think he asked me, did you know about Joseph's polygamy? And at some point, someone has told me, because I was not caught off guard by that. I was like, I think I recall that at some point somewhere, but it was never a lesson, and it wasn't it was just enough to inoculate me to not be like shocked out of like him saying that. I wasn't scared to death, but I never got a lesson in it in seminary, or never got any names. Like it was Emma and Joseph. Like that's all that I ever knew about. But I have heard at some point that he was a polygamist for the reasons that everyone gives, that there were a lot of dead Mormon men and too many women without husbands that needed to protect them. And
which isn't true.
Yeah.
There were more men than women.
Yeah. But that
Utah.
was the reason I was given at some point in some class.
Yeah.
So basically I dropped this bomb on Kayli, and we were just so out of our minds that we felt like we needed to get away for a little bit. So we went to my friend's house in Miami, took the boys, and left poor Kayli here.
I've remembered now. It was my spring break, but I had work, so I couldn't go technically.
Okay.
But.
So we go to the beach, and we show up at his house, and as soon as we get there, hey, we're here. The missionaries showed up, like right behind us. Now, as a Mormon, to me, everything means something, right? There's hidden, like the Lord's talking through all these different. Well, all of a sudden we get there, and I'm like, oh, maybe this means, the church is, true, or maybe I'm making a mistake, and this is God's way to tell me. So I'm just kind of waffling a little bit, like I know what I know now, but so anyways, we spend a week there, and we don't talk a whole lot with you or whatever. I don't think that time, but that gave you kind of permission to just, I'm going to look at stuff on my own.
Yeah.
And
it was a week, 7 days or so of me alone, finally given permission to look at the things I was not allowed to look at. And it was, whereas they had each other to kind of talk, and they had the missionaries show up, it was me alone in this house for 7 days with podcasts. I think I maybe slept an hour or two, but it was 24 hours of a year of polygamy and of Mormon stories. And it was, because I never had a shelf, it was bookshelves of beliefs that were just disintegrating with every minute that ticked off of the YouTube videos. And it was just, it's hard to describe unless you've actually lived it. It just is everything falling out from beneath you all at one time.
It's often called in our culture going down the rabbit hole, right? I guess that's an Alice in Wonderland reference. Yeah. I'm not sure. But so I'm just thinking, now that I'm thinking about you finding this out from your dad in the context of like going years, both converting your boyfriend, but like living the church standards in such an extreme way, and all the perfectionism you had battled for so many years, and having such a sort of a Orthodox father, and you're engaged. I'm trying to imagine what that was like for you.
I know people, they come on and they say, I'm the same person. I'm like, I wish my family could just see that I'm the same person. But for me, I was one person this Sunday, I went to church. I did all the things. I was one person this Sunday. And by the next, I was completely different. Like, I understand why people think that the devil has got me or whatever the other explanations are for it. Like, it was such a rapid, like, that version of me just doesn't exist anymore. She died. Like,
how did you change?
It's just, my life was built on all of those rules, all of those expectations. I was doing things to meet goals, and then I would feel satisfied for a minute, and then I was on to the next thing. And it's like within this week, I don't have to get married if I don't want to get married. I don't have to be a mother if I don't want to be a mother. And I don't have to pray if I don't want to pray. And all of these things that were foundational to who I was becoming. I just like, there was nothing. And so how did I change? I mean, I just think the church made up that version of me. Like, it was everything. It was every decision that I made. It was the clothes that I put on. It was, I don't know.
Yeah.
I do feel like a completely different person. I don't know.
Yeah. Stephen Hassan talks about it as like when you're in this really high demand religion cult scenario, that really it is a personality created by the cult. It is the cult personality, that it is slowly assembled over time through conditioning and through, these beliefs that are built that then create decisions. And so it makes so much sense to me. And then that tremendous loss of identity, and then the dissociation where you're like, this idea of, right, how do you go about rebuilding when you're at such a loss for who you are? And did you feel that?
Yeah. And that week long period was, I think, just a panic attack the entire time. Like, I remember I listened to one of your episodes where I can't remember her name, but she had said, the only thing that I know in this moment of deconstruction is that the mountains exist. And like, that's how she like grounded herself. So I would climb out my bedroom window and just lie on the roof and look at the mountains, because she's right. Like, that's all that exists right now. And like, that was the only way that spinning that I was talking about earlier, that was the only way that I could like make it stop, was like, I don't know anything. I like, everything that I have based everything on literally doesn't exist.
Was it happy? Was it sad? Was it terrified?
It was relief. It was,
why relief?
it was I was tired for so long that when I realized that it was all made up, that there was an element of, I don't have to live up to anything. But then there's also all of this work that I've done that hasn't meant anything. I've never said a cuss word. I've never drunk alcohol, and none of this matters. It's terrifying. It's every science class that I've ever sat through and history class that I've ever sat through, I've molded it around Mormonism.
Kind of the Mormon worldview.
Yes, everything. Whereas now I have to stop and
recontextualize everything. Because science and history are very different outside of a Mormon lens, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So when Todd goes to Nathan years before, or Lindsay, and Nathan's just like, speak to the hand, go away, I'm not doing this. Lots of Mormon girls, young women in your situation, could have very much responded, even to their parent, like Nathan responded to his sister and brother-in-law. In other words, to say, well, Dad, you're crazy. You're going dark. I'm cutting you out of my life. You're going to be on the sidelines of my wedding. I'm mad at you. How dare you do this? And probably more Mormons than not in your situation would go the other direction, become more faithful, become more devout, cut their parents out of their life if they needed to, and basically just become more orthodox. Why? Do you have any idea why you did, number one, have more anger at your dad, more resistance to your dad, and why you didn't double or triple down in your commitment as so many Mormons normally would?
If there had been any opportunity to, like, I just feel like when he showed me the late war comparisons to the Book of Mormon, I had just come from a class where I'm writing papers and trying not to get flagged for plagiarism. And like, I'm finally, I looked at this and I think I said to him, oh, so he just like copied it. Like he just made it up.
Joseph Smith plagiarized the Book of Mormon.
And I know there's people that disagree or whatever, but it's just, it was the first thing that my critical thinking kicked in that I hadn't been ever able to apply to church. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, what about this? And what about this? Like while he's showing me different things, I'm like finally given the permission to not have my mind controlled by Mormonism. And
it evaporated for you that quickly.
We went to eat. Ethan and I went to eat after, because that conversation was, I was starved afterward. And I was already figuring out what to say to the bishop. And it's not because I didn't have a testimony. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I haven't known how to explain it to my family. Like, I was in. But you can't show me these things and expect me to ignore them as much as I would like to. Listening to the stories on Year of Polygamy, you cannot ask me to discount every single one of these women and just go with the narrative that is being pushed. You can't. It's just impossible. It is literally impossible. It was impossible for me at that point, and is still impossible to go back. And it's like breaking a glass into a trillion pieces and trying to tape it all back together. It's not possible. It wasn't possible, and it's not possible.
Because you had such a literalistic, absolute totalitarian mindset, which some would say can be fragile, because once an opposing force comes up against glass, it shatters. It sounds like it just shattered in an instant once you opened your mind to evidence.
Yeah. And it did. And you can't tell me that how I was living before wasn't truly Mormon. You can't tell me that I wasn't fully in, and you can't tell me that I didn't have a testimony.
Or that you wanted to sin.
Or that I wanted to sin, like so many people have tried to do. It's either true or it's not.
And for you, the evidence was overwhelming?
It was immediate. And there is just too much. There's just so much to be found that it just keeps coming. And I've probably not even gotten to all of it.
What about the process of just anger that your parents raised you in this, and now they're telling you it's not true after raising you in it? That you could be angry about that, even if you believe it, that it's not true anymore, still be angry that they put you in this situation.
Yeah, they were lied to for 20 more years than I was. So
you just felt like you immediately concluded they were victims just like you.
Yeah. I went to church the next Sunday, and I still took sacrament because my dad blessed it. And I said that if anyone has the power of God, it's him. Whether or not any of this is true or any of it means anything.
They asked me to bless the sacrament. I just did a podcast about this the other day, but bawled all the way through it. I mean,
why'd you bawl?
Because I didn't believe it anymore. And they were like, hey, we need you. And so what I was going to say a second ago, we're at the beach. We're trying to figure out, well, she's getting way ahead of me.
Because you weren't trying to get her out of the church, right?
No, I was just like...
You weren't ready to leave the church yet, right?
No.
Yeah.
I didn't. And so we hadn't even told our 3 boys, our sons, like any of this. They were signed up for FSY that summer. They were about, as soon as we got back from the beach, they were going off to FSY. And so
That's a youth camp, a summer youth camp for Mormon boys and girls.
So we get home, and Sunday would roll around, and we'd get the boys up. And we were kind of like, I don't know, we need to keep going to church, for the boys' sake. So we go to the beach and have a little time to think. We get back, and we kind of had decided maybe to try to still go to church, maybe try to find a nuanced view that we did not have before. And so what started happening was Sunday morning would roll around, and Miss Perfect over here, we would say, hey, we're going to church. And of course, I got 3 boys, and we all know the difference in boys and, like my boys are great. They're also great, but they're boys, right? And so it's like, wait, Kayli's not going to church. Why doesn't Kayli have to go to church? Why do we have to go to church? It started to be this contention in the family because they don't know why. We haven't talked to them at this point. They're just like, why doesn't Kayli have to go? So every Sunday morning is like not good.
And just to be clear, when you tell Kayli that you don't think the church is true anymore, it might be inexplicable to never Mormons. You weren't wanting her to leave the church, and you weren't even necessarily at the point of deciding if you wanted to leave the church, right?
Right.
And someone asked, why didn't you just keep it from her? Because then that reduces the complexity. She can get married. She can do the temple wedding. Like a lot of, I know parents that go 20 years keeping from their children that they don't believe anymore, because they just say, well, it's a good place to raise your kids. I don't want to disrupt their lives. I don't know of a better path. So I'm just going to fake it and not tell my kids. And some parents go their whole lives that way. I guess that's a 2-part question. Why couldn't you do that? Just hide it and fake it. And then secondly, why weren't you just trying to get her to leave the church and you wanting to leave the church too? Because you weren't, right?
Yeah.
So that's a 2-part question.
Well, it's actually really easy though, because I have always attended the church because I thought and believed and knew that it was true. It wasn't a country club. It wasn't a good place to be. And I was always outspoken and very wear my heart on my sleeve, and I am who I appear to be. And so, no, there was no chance that I was going to fake it or anything like that. That's just not, I can't do that. However, the other part of the question, I also wasn't sure that I was ready to leave. I didn't know, we kind of got to Florida. There's the missionaries. I'm chatting with them. And I just remember saying, I'm so Mormon. Everything about me is so Mormon. So I just did not know. And so I'm in this space of wondering if I screwed up by even talking to her, because she's took the ball and she's running with it. She knew exactly where she was going, but she kind of left us behind a little bit. And I start really worrying about that, but also I'm learning more. I'm more podcasts and CES letter and all of these things. And I'm just like, but it's not true. And I have this internal fight. This is the time that I was alluding to earlier, that I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping. I have, in the first time in my life, what I now know is like a panic attack, or what's the other word? I'm losing my mind, and I end up in the emergency room.
Are you thinking nervous breakdown?
Nervous breakdown. Yeah. I'm just, and I thought I was dying. I mean, I've tried to explain how I felt, but it's hard to.
So you admitted yourself to an emergency room.
I went down to the emergency room. I go in, I'm losing my mind. They're like, what'd you do to, they're thinking I've overdosed on something. They're hooking me up to all these wires. And
were you suicidal?
I was not. No, I've never been suicidal, but I thought I was dying. Like my heart was racing. My mind was racing. My heart was racing. I get over there and I'm like, I just need something to calm down. And they thought I had overdosed. So they run all these tests and they come back an hour later. They're like, dude, you're clean. Like, I know I'm clean. I've never touched anything. Of course I'm clean. Of course, he didn't know what was actually going on.
You were like, I'm clean. Can you give me drugs and calm me down?
Yeah. And so he did. He gave me something. I have no idea what it was. And I think he says, hey, if he does this again, told my wife, give this to him. Well, it actually happened again. I went.
Some type of benzodiazepine.
I don't know. I don't know what it was.
They give you a benzo.
And a few days later, I ended up.
Probably Xanax. Probably.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I went back, but the second time I didn't go in. I paced the parking lot. I was like, okay, just take me back home. So I was just losing my mind.
Wow.
And my wife took a picture of me in there. I shared it with you on the last time, but it's pitiful. I mean, just looking at me, I can just see. I was a pitiful person. Everything that I thought I knew, I didn't know. But I wasn't totally sure what I needed to do. She was sure what she wanted to do. She was well on her way of getting out of church. And so, yeah, it was a terrible time. Well, I keep learning and I keep watching and listening to podcasts. Well, I finally find my voice to start speaking out. I start writing Facebook posts. And I have never been a writer. I have writers in the family. I have songwriters in my family, but I have never had that outlet. And all of a sudden, people start sharing, like, oh my gosh, I love what Bishop Hinckley or whatever says. And it's like, really, it felt great. Like, you like what I'm writing?
What types of things were you posting?
Can I share a little snip?
Yeah.
All right. I just found this. This is, I have a professional writer right by my side. But this is the type of thing, and I think that it comes across very mild. Okay, I called this 8 verses 45. I said, in my church, an 8-year-old who still believes in Santa, wets the bed, and probably can't say his R's, can make an eternal covenant that will be binding and beneficial, not for a few years or 100 years, but for all time and eternity. There is no objection to this eternal ordinance, but rather it is expected that this will happen during his 8th year. If it does not happen while 8, the family is punished by making the child go through the missionary lessons as a typical investigator would. The 8-year-old is fully capable of making this decision. On the other hand, a 45-year-old man who has spent a year or two in deep study, cross-referencing, searching, and verifying and weighing the evidence, is misled, misguided, or deceived if he comes to a different conclusion regarding the truth claims of this church. The 8-year-old will likely share his testimony soon after his baptism in church, while repeating the words his parents whispers in his ear, I know the church is true. The 45-year-old would likely be asked to sit down or escorted out if he shares what he believes to be true. So he starts a Facebook page instead. Just these kind of like, this does not make sense. Like, topic after topic in a respectful way, but like, this is how I feel. So let's just start posting stuff like this.
And that's what Todd and Lindsay didn't do, right?
Right. Yeah, they didn't do that. And I did. I can't fake it. So, that continued for a while of just new topic, new podcasts that I'm studying, a lot of the LDS discussions.
So you can't fake it, but you can just go away quietly, in theory.
Yeah.
Just leave it and leave it alone, as believing Mormons would love us to do. Why couldn't you leave it and leave it alone?
After standing up in Baptist churches and calling out preachers and preaching in Argentina on the streets and going around the mission or going around the stake on the high council and speaking in church and testifying that I know these things are true, like I felt like I have the right as a member, as a member to speak out about these things that
right. But did you feel like you had a duty?
Yeah, I did. I felt
what
like
was that?
to set the record straight. So that's what I started to do, and that started to cause a lot of waves until.
Did you run to Lindsay and Todd and say I was wrong?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I actually, I'll have to back up just a little bit because I texted. This was after I talked to Nathan, my other bishop friend. They were my next call. And I should have said that. I should have said that earlier. I texted Lindsay on April Fool's Day 2 years ago, so 23. And I said, Lindsay, I'm sorry for the way I treated you when you left the church. And she said, oh my gosh, I think I know what this means. And I said, I've been at the lowest of lows, but I've learned some things and we need to talk. And she says, oh my gosh. And here's what she didn't do. She didn't say, I told you so, or anything like that. She said, I'm so sorry. This must be so hard for you. Do you need to talk? So yeah, I did. I should have mentioned that earlier. That was my first call. After talking to Nathan and finding out what is going on, then I had to apologize. But anyway, so I start speaking out about the church. The stake president eventually wants to talk to me. And so I took a picture and said, this is me on my way to talk to the stake president. And I posted it on the Mormon Stories podcast page. And that's when you saw the picture and said, hey, you want to talk about this? So she pretty immediately removes your name, right?
So I think it was that next Sunday. To go back a little bit, he had said he felt like I had just left them in the dust. But I remember saying to my mom when you all had gotten back that I feel like Dad's thrown me off a train and you all are just keeping on. And she said, don't you dare tell your dad that, because they had just been to the ER and I didn't know all of that. So I'm spiraling, he's spiraling. And, but I go to church that Sunday and I tell the bishop I need to be released from my calling. I've seen a lot of these things that I don't think there are answers for, and I need some time. And he didn't know about any of it. And he said, are your doubts worth your salvation? And I took a minute to compose myself. And in my head, it was just this, it sealed the deal. It was, this is not right. This is not true.
What was wrong with that response?
My salvation, I did not think was ever in question. Like I never, throughout this entire thing, like, we don't believe in heaven and hell. Like
Mormons.
Yeah. Like I didn't know where that response came from. And I realized in the moment that he's scared, that my bishop is scared of these things that I've seen and he doesn't know about them and he doesn't want to know about them. And I just realized that he doesn't know and no one else knows. I'm making the right decision.
He's scared and there's a little control tactic in there.
Yep. Yeah, it was a clarifying.
And then how long after that meeting was it when you removed your name?
I think we waited a couple months to turn in the paper, and we went into him, and Ethan and I did, and he didn't want to know. He did not. We gave him the paper, and he did not want to know details.
Isn't it weird that the Mormon Church doesn't train its bishops and stake presidents about these issues? Isn't it weird?
Yeah. Definitely weird.
In 2025 or 2022 or whatever, they've known this stuff since B.H. Roberts had the secret Mormon meetings in 1922, or since Von Brody released No Man Knows My History in 1945, or since Leonard Arrington opened up the church history department in 1972, or since the September 6th were excommunicated in 1993. Like, they've known all along. And certainly they knew by 2014, 15, when they've released all the Gospel Topics essays. But still to this day in 2025, these bishops have no clue what's going on, or stake presidents, with their mission, with their board members.
Yeah.
That was validating to you, Kayli, that
he didn't know about the essays. He didn't think I brought up, Joseph's polygamy and the second anointing. I just threw several things out there just to test the waters, and he did not.
And to you, that
meant like I already didn't think there were answers, and especially, I already knew. My dad was a bishop. I knew going in that he probably wouldn't know, but just for him to fire off the almost like a threat, it was. Which he's a great guy. Like he was scared. That's why I say that. He didn't mean that in the way that it came across, but to me, it was just, that's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Now, had you sent out announcements for your wedding? Engagement announcements or anything?
At that point, we were about to, because I was making phone calls to the temples to figure out, because we're in between two, figuring out which one we're going to go to. So that's why I think that's another layer on why he told me, because going to the temple is a big deal.
That's what part of the weight was. It's like, she's about to get married. Do I let her do this? How can I do that as a loving parent in good conscience? Let her go to the temple knowing what I know. So this huge weight, not to mention boys about to go on missions and things. So the day that she tells me I'm taking my papers in to resign, this is just a couple lines from this song. I'm listening to this song on repeat all day long this day. And I just bawled my eyes out. Today.
What's the song? Who sings it?
It's called.
I want to hug you. Why am I over here?
An old friend of mine.
Oh.
I'll tell you in a second.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember. Today I did something I never thought I'd do. A choice. It wasn't easy, but I had to. All those years together, those cold, lonely nights, I never thought I'd be strong enough to leave it all behind. And today, I said goodbye to an old friend of mine. That's what I was thinking. I knew it wasn't true, but I wanted it to be true, So she let out in the family. She really did. And my wife wasn't that far behind her. I haven't taken my name off because I feel like it's my right to speak out. I'm only saying true things. Now, if I start lying on the church or something, they ought to excommunicate me. And maybe they will anyways. But I have only said true things, such as the things about the seer stone and all the, just all of the things that church members do not know that they should know. That's what I've said. But I was not looking for a way out. I wanted it to be true. I found out that it wasn't what I thought it was. And it was an old friend. I loved my time at church. Still love the people there. I was bishop to a lot of good people in this area who I've sat in the bishop's office and gave blessings and cried and counsel and The other day, I was told by a church member who is still active, they said, yeah, I just wanted to come give you a hug because all I hear is negative things about you at church anymore. You know? But yeah, it's an old friend. I mean, great memories, great people, but not what we thought it was. Not what we signed up for.
Really quick, Mark, you were feeling something. Do you want to say what you were feeling? I'm curious.
Oh, well, I love myself like words.
Mhm.
I'm a words person. So, but I also just felt like that was such a poetic way to describe what you're feeling. The choice thing is so powerful because I think for many of us, we feel like our conditioned selves were kind of driving the car.
Yeah.
And so it does feel like if there is something that is different or even opposite to what we've experienced in the church, it would be conscious choice, actually, So I love that.
Yeah.
And I love the friend thing because I think that is how complicated it can feel. Like you can love a thing and you can realize it's no longer good for you or it's not what it thought. It's just, I feel like these things in life oftentimes we like it, that binary part of us, like we like it to be one thing. But more often than not, it's a lot of things and oftentimes a lot of things that are paradoxical. They oppose each other. You love it and you feel betrayed by it. And I think so it was just really an apt, beautiful thing to read. That's all.
Thanks. Yeah, that's Joe Nichols. It's an old country song, old friend of mine.
Maybe abusive spouse or abusive parent, you love them, but they've hurt you.
Yeah.
Or they've deceived you,
That's
So an interesting thing that happened when I went to talk to the stake president, I said, I'll come in to talk to you, but I want you to know the things I've been saying online. So I sent it all to him. And I go in and talk to him, and we talked for about an hour and a half or 2 hours. And when I get done, he says, you know what? I think, in my opinion, you are in a better place now than you were as an active believing member.
What?
Yep. And that was the thing that was so surprising because he saw me before, and the guy is gold. I'll just tell you, you don't get much better than this family. I mean, they are truly good people.
And was this the bishop of your growing up? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Different guy.
So he determines, or he can tell that before I was black and white, right and wrong.
Insufferable.
Yep. And now I've learned the hard way of this nuance, and it's just a lot more space for people to have their own beliefs and their own ideas. And that was the takeaway. And he's heard me talk about this on your podcast last time and on my own. And I've talked to him since. He says, yeah, I stand by that. I think you're in a better place now than you were before.
More compassionate, more open-minded, more loving of people.
Right. And I saw it in myself. I remember being at the gas station at this time, looking over at a guy, tattoos, getting alcohol and tobacco and just found like a new love. Like, this guy's not a bad person. We're in this together. Like, I just found a new love for people. And that's what it did for me.
So, Kayli, back to you. The title we came up with for this episode was like, My Dad Ruined My Mormon Wedding. Like, you could have just said, well, I brought my boyfriend into this. It's a good way to live. We're engaged now. Like, we'll just go with it. And then maybe in a few years down the road, figure it out. But why don't we just go ahead and go with the temple wedding and maybe even stay in the church because, if it's not true, it's a good way to raise a family. Did that even cross your mind?
I mean, I had Ethan who grew up going to church and never holding a specific belief. And this was just another one. This is the path that I'm on right now, and it serves me right now. And if it doesn't later, then it doesn't later. And we got to that it doesn't later quicker than we thought we did. And I'm like my dad. We went to church. I think it was an Easter Sunday that came up next or the next weekend, and we went, and it just didn't feel good. Not that I would go and pretend, but I just don't think I feel comfortable there anymore. And it doesn't serve me. And I got a lot of good things from it, and I'll take a lot of good things with me into whatever comes next. But we had decided that day that it wasn't going to work. And if it's not true, we're not going to subject ourselves to it. And also I didn't want to be a poster child for it anymore. I didn't want any good thing that came out of my life to be attributed to the church after that point.
How did Ethan respond to, did you have a conversation with Ethan, and what did that look like right after you did your deep dive?
Yeah. He was very emotional, with the conversation with my dad. And I mean, he had so much hope for this thing and put a lot of trust in me and in my family and in it. But of course, there were the little things, the patriarch, and he wasn't so sure about some things that he didn't voice to me, and shoved him down because he loved and trusted me. But when my dad came to us with this stuff, I'm glad he was honest with us, and for him it was, he's not going to go pretend. And as much as I love that church building, because like I said in the beginning, I love places, and I felt so safe there. Just those last Sundays, I just felt like an intruder. They deserve their safe place, and I don't feel safe there. So it's not for me, and it's not for us. And I don't need a church. As much as I miss the people, and I've only been reached out to by one person. So it's just I don't know. We just don't need that if it's not mutual, and it doesn't feel mutual. So
you're making me think of just how strange it is and interesting to observe those times in life where you're living your life, and something either happens to you or you have an experience, right? And it literally changes. A loss of someone can be this way, but this is it for you. But isn't it an interesting thing to think about how there are things we live through where almost instantaneously there is this sort of
paradigm shift.
Yeah, there is this shift, and we are legitimately no longer the same in some really defining way, And that's just what as you're vocalizing this change and how you felt about yourself, and how even this building that really had a really grounding, it sounds like it was a grounding place for you. And then from one week to the next, it's totally different. Just it meant something different.
And I still feel this this ache to go sit in the pews or whatever. And it's just I could. It just wouldn't be the same. And so it's more of just, I guess, nostalgia, which is fine. But I don't know. Just things will never be the same. I will never be the same. But I also think I'm a better person now. I like this version of me a lot better than I liked that tired and very stressed out and always reaching for something unattainable version. So
you wrote some poems to kind of express some of your perspectives or feelings or reflections. Do you want to?
Yep, I can share those.
Do you want to share one or two or three of them just to give a sense for? And you can feel free to give us background.
Okay. I'll just read two of them. And yeah, I guess the background is mostly just that I've always been a reader, and when all of this happened, I had that paradigm shift, and I marched into my dean's office at my college, and I said, I'm changing my major, changing it to English. And I got some pushback from him. I was political science before. And he was like, are you sure? I really think you're just changing your major because you're getting married. And I was like, no, I think I'm doing this because it's going to serve my life a lot better. But the last 2 years in this English program have been also very life-changing for me and very eye-opening, and have made me a better writer, but they've also just made me a better person. And I've had a lot of what I would consider religious experiences or spiritual experiences in these classes, listening to these teachers talk about literature and nothing like highbrow, just humanity and how that shows up in books and poetry and things like that, which made me start writing. And after listening to, I heard you talk about the musket fire talk. Was it Holland that gave that?
Yeah, he basically, I'll just to give people the background, Jeffrey Holland, one of our most senior apostles, gave a talk at BYU, our flagship university, basically encouraging faculty and staff to show more opposition to gay and lesbian Mormons, and specifically opposing same-sex marriage. And it's something that's devastated his reputation, his legacy, and that caused so many people to leave the church. He also called out and shamed a valedictorian who gave a talk. He came out during his valedictorian speech. Matt Easton came out as gay, and Holland shamed this young man in a really disgusting and violent, abusive way. I don't know how else to say it. That's my opinion. Yeah. So this is named after that talk.
It is. Okay. And it was spurred by listening to his talk, but also just thinking about what our family dynamic is now with in our like grandparents. And I'll just go ahead and read it, but just to say that talk sort of inspired it, but it's also based on what I see going on in my family currently. But you protect your truth with musket fire, long polished barrels aimed at the dissent. Do not fear. They say you were born for this, a preordained soldier to fill this battlefield. So close your eyes and do not mind the blood when your bullets bury in the chest of a brother, a daughter, a sister, a friend. Here, take up your weapon day after day in the name of your good news, your King of Kings, your Prince of Peace, and plug your ears to block out the sound of your loved ones as they scream for you from behind enemy lines. And ignore as best you can how this holy war's divide runs straight through your bloodline, pitting father against son, tearing your hard-earned eternity in two. And when you're lying in the trenches at midnight, hollow and haunted by all you've lost, try your best not to question why you're holding a gun or why you've been called to protect your truth with nothing but blazing, mindless musket fire. The tears didn't help with the reading of that, but
I don't know.
Do you want to say anything else about what you want to say with that poem? Or
I think if it could be understood through the tears, it speaks for itself. But I don't know that anyone will listen to this that is still true believing. But I just really wish that people could take a step back and actually consider the other side. And that as hard as it is for you, it's really hard for us. And I'll just read one more.
And is that just about LGBT Mormons?
Not only. It was written for that, and then as I kind of built on it, it was just in general. We make decisions because we think that they're best for us, or because they're healthy for us, whether it be your sexual identity or whatever it is. It's just,
or getting married in the temple,
or leaving the church. Just, there's always a second side. And I don't think when you're in the church that you consider it very often. And I wish that we would. The other one is death of faith. And I actually think Dad reads it better than I do, but he's read it on his podcast before, so I'll go ahead. What a shame it is that so many of my ancestors sacrificed so much for a spot in some higher heaven, a heaven stained by lies spewed by white men who vied for greatness and power above all else. Those before me wore the shackles that I've now buried with so much reverence, swallowed the lies down with mouthfuls of sacrament bread and a convicted amen. But what they had wasn't faith, coursing through their blood, giving them the strength to lose themselves in their sacrifice day after day. It was fear. The blinding, animalistic kind that eats at you until you're only a husk. And so it makes me wonder if they're proud of me for being brave enough to break the chain of being enslaved to an eternal perspective. And I think that is me just thinking back on my past self and hoping that even if my family now isn't proud of me, not this one, but I don't know, that the ones that, the pioneers, the ones that did a lot harder things than I have, I don't know, if they're looking, if they're watching, I hope that they're proud.
And then the second part there, the eternal perspective, I've heard her talk about that, how that used to be her answer for everything, and mine too. Like, oh, this life might be hard or whatever you're going through, but keep an eternal perspective. It's the same thing with
Think celestial.
the knot.
Think celestial.
Yeah, think celestial. Right. It's all the same idea, which is don't worry about this life, or don't worry about what's going on. It'll all be worked out. Later on, it'll all be worth it. And just giving that up and living life for today and for the people we have around us now, and taking advantage of these moments that we have, not worrying so much about this eternal perspective. And it's made so much sense before. I spoke about it all the time from the pulpit, but it's just words. It's just empty words. Like, what's most important is, what are you going to do today or this week to love and be with people? Who cares about the eternities?
A billion years from now,
Right.
When you don't know if you're going to be around, you don't know.
Right.
But you got today, right?
Yeah.
So it goes from like the infinite string with that teeny, teeny knot, and it's the string that matters, not the teeny, teeny knot, to like the knot is it.
Right.
The knot's the whole enchilada.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a total perspective shift. And it's the opposite of what we're taught. Like the Book of Mormon says, woe unto those who say, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. But you're saying eat, drink, and be merry. Are you? I mean, metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically, yeah. Yeah, I am. I mean, that's what we know. That's a given. That's a definite,
Yeah.
And that's part of the pain that I was going through to make that shift. It took some tears and some heartache, but I agree with my stake president. I am in a much better place now. Oh my gosh, my family, my children and their spouses,
Your immediate family.
yeah, we are light years. Like, you could ask my boys, like, do y'all like Dad better now, or like, hands down. Just I don't want them to make decisions because of something I did or I want them to do. Like, I'm interested in what they want now. And it just really wasn't that, to an extent. Yeah. But before, I wanted them to do what the prophet says, and I want missions, and, and it's different, and it's much better. Now, my extended family, that's another story. There was no family tighter than our family before.
Your brothers, your parents.
And I'm sorry to say that it's strained,
You've become that family you never could understand.
Right.
Where you're just not all tight and connected. That must be heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. We're still young in this. I mean, people deal with this. You guys know better than I do. We're 2 years into this. So I think maybe it'll get better, but it's not been great. So I asked myself, I had a friend the other day that passed away in a car wreck. He was a member, but not very active, but still believed it. Well, when I heard of the terrible accident, I went, we don't talk a lot, but we were pretty close. I go to his Facebook page and I find out he had unfriended me. And it was hard. It was hard to think, wow, like, is this worth it? I mean, I'm losing people that they don't want to hear what I have to say anymore. So they unfriend me, and I don't blame him. I've unfriended some people too. It's just, I ask myself, is it worth it? And to be perfectly honest, when I started my podcast, because I went from writing to doing what I like to do more, and that's talking and being with people and interviewing and listening and that.
It's called The Bishop's Interview, right?
Yeah, The Bishop's Interview. YouTube, I mean, I was doing an episode every night. Like, I was on fire.
I remember.
And since that funeral a month ago, or maybe 2 months ago now, I don't know. I've just kind of asked myself, is it worth it? Losing friends, losing family relationships, and
is it worth speaking up?
Is it worth speaking out? I mean, I don't doubt or question, what the decisions we've made, but I have eased up on the podcast and the posts. Lately I've decided to pursue some music stuff a lot more than I was doing. Like I told you before, I'm a kind of a single track mind, and I get wrapped up in what I'm doing. And I still plan on doing the podcast, but it's not every night.
And it's also hard when you slow down with the speaking out, that your relationships get a little better. And so it's hard to see a little bit of like healing, and then to rip the Band-Aid back off, even if it is true what you're saying, even if you do want to be loud, even if it's just hard whenever you're doing a balancing act every time that you post a video or post something on Facebook.
So I hear is what part of what you're saying the preference that you be silent? Like, you can feel what you feel, and it can be different, maybe tolerated, I guess, on that. But if you speak out, it's like, no. Feel what you feel, but be quiet about it. Is that kind of what you're saying? That you're feeling like that's less bad if you're quiet?
Oh, for sure. No doubt about that. I mean, I have so many friends and family who are still active, and most people don't speak out quite like we have. Most people maybe take a path more like what Lindsay and Todd did. And, I say whatever path someone chooses is the best for them. For me, I really needed to be true and authentic, and to be the same person I was when I was faithful and believing, which I spoke up and spoke out, and I was loud, and that's me. And just because I'm on the other side now, I still have to be true to myself. And the one thing I've said a lot is, I know some people don't like me talking about their church, but I'm not talking about their church. I'm talking about mine. Like, this is what I grew up with. This is what I believe or believed. So I know it doesn't, it's hard, but I'm not talking about their church. I'm talking about mine.
Right.
So all that to say, I don't know where I want to go. I'll always be some percent Mormon. And that's what that Nathan had said. And when I interviewed my friend Nathan, He says, I'll always be some percent Mormon. And I think that's probably me. You know, that's my heritage and that's my ancestors and that's my. So what percent? Maybe it'll be 1 or less than 1%. But yeah.
Yeah, just to get personal for just a second, like we have damaged relationships beyond repair by doing this podcast. And it has caused harm to people we love, both people who've left the church and the people who have stayed. And when I see someone like you start a podcast, there's part of me that wants to be an advocate to promote it so that you can be successful. And there's a part of me that says, don't do it. You know, it might hurt you. It might hurt your loved ones. It might hurt relationships. And like, I don't want to sound like a martyr, but I'm just being honest. So often I think we do this so that you won't have to, because why should you wreck relationships too and harm people? Like, you know, let us, we've already got that burnt, scorched earth. No sense in you having scorched earth too. You know, and I'm not trying to sound like a martyr, but that's literally what comes to my mind. Mark, you were going to grab the mic for a second.
I was just going to say, I mean, part of the challenge, I think, from moving from a binary black and white kind of thinking, living it for years and years and years. So it's so natural to us, right? To kind of think of things that way, is this complexity on the other side. And here's the rub, is I feel like one of the toughest places to be is in relationship with people where the thing that you're doing is healing for you. You need it. It's like it's like writing about where you've been and talking about it and making it real and healing and bringing people together and trying to create community in this community that you love so much, right?
Yeah.
And trying to create that on the other side, that is the very thing that hurts people you love. That's the rub. And we're there in marriage oftentimes, and we're there with extended family, and we're in all sorts of ways. And it's complicated. And all I can say is the reason I think it's healing for so many of us comes down to authenticity and this idea of claiming who we are after organizations have claimed us for themselves, you know? But also I think it's I don't know. I also feel like it's a little bit of a new place to say, I get to save myself too. It's not all about saving other people. Like sometimes I get to save and do something for myself too, you know?
I love that. But can I take one opportunity to thank you two, though? Because I know you've said that there have been relationships hurt, and I hope you know how much, like what you guys do, you know, the blessing it truly is for people like me and my family. You are so sincere, and I mean, there's no doubt if someone hears you for 20 minutes, they say these people are good, honest people. That's how you come across. That's how you are, and we are thankful. So yeah, there may be some harm somewhere, but the good you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. And it's when I hear a story about, I'll just say the Hinckley family in Knoxville, when I hear that, I mean, why we started Mormon Stories was to help keep families from being torn apart. And in many cases, we do that. But sometimes there's the tearing apart before there's the bringing it back together. And sometimes, you know, obviously, when Lindsay and Todd fell away, that was super hard on them to be isolated from the rest of the entire family. And it hurt those relationships. But now that the sweet about y'all falling away or discovering truth is that now you can be allies and supports to Todd and Lindsay. So that's the sweet. But the bitter is now your family's more divided. And I hate the fact that I mean, that's, if I ever want to call the Mormon Church a cult, it's when I know it's dividing families. No religion, especially no religion who bears Christ's name, in my opinion, should be breaking up a otherwise healthy marriage or an otherwise healthy family. I know that Jesus himself said, I've come to divide mother from son or husband from wife or parent from child. I know he said that, but I just want to think that was someone else who misquoted him. Because what healthy religion is going to be tearing a loving family apart?
Right.
I hate it.
One thing I wanted to make sure I said is Kayli's, you guys can tell, she's a smart girl. If there's anything that I like know in the bottom of my soul, it's that she was going to find this path regardless. Like she was, even as a teenager, you know, and I'll just say it, in the South, we tend to be pretty far to the right politically and things. And she was starting to find her voice on a lot of things. It was just like, well, I don't really believe in that, or that's not how I feel. And I was very far to the right previously. And she was starting to speak out and like, I have a voice in this. And so I think that it just leads, like she was going to find this path, this truth. Had she beat me to the punch with the way that I was before, I cannot really even think about the way I would have treated her. I know the way I treated my sister. I wasn't great. I was pretty bad. And if she would have found out and this isn't true and this, I mean, I would have, I don't want to say it. I would have written her off. Like, sorry, you know.
So many Mormon parents do.
So I'm thankful that we were in it together with your all's help and many others, you know, that it went the way it needed to go. Because if she would have beat me to the punch, I would have been prideful about it. I would have been like, who are you? I've spent my whole life. I can't believe you. I can't believe, you know, I would have probably blamed Ethan. Ethan's pulling you away. So it would have been devastating.
It sounds like in a way you're grateful to Todd and Lindsay and the other Nathan.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it would have happened without them.
No. And grateful that the church selected me to take a random survey on the gospel topic essays, which people still don't know. I mean, most of my Facebook posts have been, hey, people, you know, there's these gospel topic essays. This is what it says. I still have people asking me, what are these? Where do you find them?
Some people think they're forgeries or
it's amazing.
Hackers because they don't want to accept what's in them. Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember Lindsay and Todd reaching out to me years ago to just tell me what's going on, years before your stuff happened.
Oh yeah.
You know, love and shout out to Todd and Lindsay, the McCormicks, you know, because they kind of being that pioneer, that first, talk about pioneers, Mormons talk about pioneers. When you're the first in your family to venture off, there's a real pioneering price you pay, you know? So shout out to Todd and Lindsay, you know, right? Mm. And to you, Kayli, you know, and to you, Nathan, and Amy as well.
And can we have a moment for your poetry? Really?
Thank you.
Truly, truly beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So she won't tell you, but I will. She submitted 3 of these to a competition of some sort at school. They all won first place, of course. This is, I mean, very, very talented writer. She's got books and poems. I mean, she's going places.
He's your hype man.
He is my hype man.
Okay, so we teased this episode with kind of the title, My Dad Ruined My Mormon Marriage, or My Mormon Wedding. To put a happy end to the story, I get a sense that your wedding wasn't ruined.
It was not.
Just your Mormon wedding.
Yes.
Do you want to just talk about, like, did you end up with Ethan?
Yes.
Was the wedding ruined? Was the
Yes.
wedding better than it otherwise would have been?
Yeah.
Let's put a happy end. Let's put a cherry on this.
Cherry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No temple plans were made. I would have been right in my assumption that it would have been weird. Ethan would have had an issue with it, and I would have had an issue with it because
If what?
if I had been through the temple, that would have been a nightmare.
Oh, you now know that
Yes.
the temple ceremony would have been a
That
deal
would have been a nightmare
for
me.
both of you and Ethan.
Yeah, and Ethan.
Okay.
the hats, it wouldn't have went over well.
It's still super culty. They're trying to make it less culty, but the
Yeah.
temple ceremony is just irretrievably culty.
Yeah.
It is.
And
Yeah.
just hearing that growing up and being like, we are not a cult. And then you hear of stories of people sitting there and realizing for the first time that it's a cult. It just would have been, I'm so thankful that I did not have to go through the temple with him, but we did get married. We got married in October of 2023. Beautiful wedding. Thank you, Dad. Dress was off the shoulder, no garments. That was the main thing. I really, even though I grew up with a garment mindset, I did not want to wear garments as I got older. And I started working outside and I was like, that's not going to work. So my dress was not garment approved. Still wouldn't be garment approved with the changes. So I'm proud of myself for that choice, but it was great. Ethan's great. He's still great. Even though I flirted to convert, I did flirt to convert and I feel bad about that, but it's okay because we also left together. So it worked out for the better.
Yeah. And it wasn't until my adult years that I went to a non-Mormon wedding and realized there's so much more fun than a Mormon wedding on average. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I've been to probably 500 weddings.
500. Oh, because you do cinematography.
And, I didn't go into this in my story, and maybe we're already past that, but I'll just say that that was like maybe a shelf thing for me because I saw very few Mormon weddings. So almost all, whatever, Baptist or whatever. And I just saw people like coming together of families, like you said, and a fun, joyous occasion. Oftentimes alcohol is involved, and
which often is a good thing, I hear.
Right.
Because it helps lubricate and bring people closer, right?
Yes.
So what, Margie, you want to say?
I was going to say we've experienced it through Maya's wedding, and but then I was like, but not personally, but like we've experienced it in watching.
Yes.
It seemed like a lot of like it was fun for us to be around it.
So we've heard.
Yeah.
Well, I am a kind of off the wall guy. I can do whatever. I'm not nervous about things. My wife, on the other hand, is very timid, shy, nervous. And, in the past 2 years that we've been deconstructing and things, we spend every weekend that we can doing things we've never done before, like dancing or, and she might have a drink or two and she loosens up and she has a great time. There's so many different things that we're just experiencing for the first time. And it's all because we kind of have a new shot at life. So for her, and maybe it's an anxiety thing. Maybe it could be addressed by various ways. But I've noticed that, a drink or two in an outing helps her a lot to relax and have a good time. So, there's so many different things we could talk about. It really blessings of the faith crisis. All I can say is life is so much more full, so much more authentic, and I love it.
And Kayli, I've seen your dad sent me your wedding video this morning. I think your smile reaches your eyes.
It does. If I finally figured out how to smile, and it just so happened to be when I left the Mormon church. So.
And maybe go one level deeper, because at church or not church, I think there's just something about you connecting with you. Is that what's deeper than the church? You know what I mean? In terms of what's happened with you.
There was that element of mind control that I keep talking about, the thought stopping, and I can identify it now. It still happens and I still feel it. And sometimes it still makes me sick. And sometimes I still question, like, am I making the right decision? And then I stop myself and I go internal and I reflect and I remember all that I've been through and all that I've found out and all that I've studied, because I've studied a lot, and I don't doubt myself anymore.
And when you talked about recontextualizing history and science and your worldview outside of a Mormon lens, where have you landed with all that? That's a big question, but like, do you feel like, how are you enjoying recontextualizing life outside of the Mormon lens? And where are you landing with things like morality or spirituality or community or family or education or whatever?
Yeah, I think when all of this happened, I basically, when I was sending out messages, I was just saying I've always kind of put the Bible below the Book of Mormon, and I've neglected it for so long, and it just so happens that when you take a critical look at the Bible, as I did with the Book of Mormon, it is unfortunately sort of the same thing. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to say that I'm an atheist or that I'm agnostic, or like, I just enjoy not knowing. And I enjoy listening to, the Christian versus atheist debates, and they're interesting to me. And I enjoy listening and not having to come to a decision at the end of it. And Ethan isn't really interested in deconstructing faith like he has with Mormonism, and I'm just at the point where I realize that we don't have to be the same human being, because that was stressed so much in Mormonism, that you need to be equally yoked and you need to find your eternal companion, that you are, the perfect match or whatever, and that you're on the same page with everything. And we can be two different people who work really well together. And it works like that.
And so many people value religion for identity, for morality, for community, for spirituality. Are you finding, your own approaches to those things outside of a religion that feels satisfying to you? Or do you feel like there's big holes, big gaping holes?
Yeah, I don't feel like there's hole. Like, we attend sometimes with his family, a non-denominational church, and I like some of the messages and I don't like some of the messages, and I can leave feeling like I had a great time, and I can leave feeling like I would have had a better time out on the lake or reading a book. And I don't know, I've not had children, and I don't know what I'll do when I do, or I don't know what I'll teach them, but I don't necessarily think that, as much as I loved my childhood and as much as I did end up enjoying, I like who I am and I like who the guardrails kind of force me to be, but I don't know that they're necessary.
So you're enjoying, do you feel like you're significantly enjoying your life more now?
Yes. A lot less stress, and I don't know. There's so many more. I remember being like, growing up, like in high school, I wasn't really interested in science and history because it didn't matter, because I knew when I got to the celestial kingdom, I would get to learn all of that. I mean, it didn't really matter to me. And now I'm like, no, this is all I have. And I need to watch the YouTube video on ancient Egypt because I might not ever get to learn that. Well, I'm like, there's so many things that I'm never going to get to or see or experience. And like he said, like, this is it. The blip is it.
And that's exciting for you.
That is exciting. It's very exciting.
Isn't that strange?
It is strange.
That for some people, it's like, why bother living if there isn't answers to these questions? And others are more excited not having answers, that they come alive with not knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I was going to say the same thing as far as learning to be okay and excited about saying, I don't know. And I've never said I don't know before. I knew everything. I knew all the answers.
You were so insufferable.
I taught all the things to the. She's not the only one that converted her boyfriend or
sweetheart.
So our son also did that with his girlfriend.
We were
so
doing our jobs.
Who is also married now too. So yeah, I taught all the missionaries would come over and say, let's just let Bishop Hinckley teach it. He knows all this. So I knew all the answers. Now I don't know hardly anything except I love who I am now. I'm okay with not knowing a lot of stuff, and it doesn't scare me. And other than that, I try to be a good person. When I see the homeless guy down the street, because there's this one guy we pass all the time, I stop and give him money about every time I see him now. And I just love people more. And I don't know. I feel like I agree with my stake president. I'm in a better place.
And you're closer to Lindsay and Todd.
For sure.
And that other Nathan guy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been such a delight. You know, we always like, we have to go to Knoxville. Do we want to travel? But this is so fun, isn't it? I had fun. Yeah. I'm so glad we came out. Thanks for setting up the audio and the video here, cameras and the lighting. Yeah. If any of you need cinematography work done in the Knoxville area. And you're a photographer too, right?
I am a photographer, yes.
You do
I do weddings.
Destination weddings?
Hey, I will get on a plane. I have just graduated, so I can do just about anything. Yep.
And you do weddings and all sorts of stuff. So if you're kind of in the Nashville, Memphis, Tennessee,
anywhere.
Yep, anywhere.
All right.
And she's got the biggest heart. You remember Anna?
Yeah.
That was Kayli's idea. And so
Anna, our Pentecostal, ex-Pentecostal person, right? That came on Mormon Stories, who at the time we interviewed her house was just totally decimated. And we put a call out.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us?
Yeah. So Kayli says, Dad, we've got to help. We find out she lives, a couple hours away. So we scheduled a thing and went out there, and you guys were so gracious to give some live. We sent you pictures, and you gave updates on your podcast about it. Well, apparently she ended up being able to sell her house to some of your previous guests. Yes. So you're doing the Lord's work.
Y'all are. We just flap our lips.
Okay. Well, it takes us all.
You helped restore their house.
Yeah, we spent a day out there working, and Kayli and Ethan
I did some painting. Yep.
So
and then their house was purchased. Yeah, that's exciting.
By
I don't want.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just say the Mormon Stories audience is no slouch. It's a community unto itself, and we see that and really appreciate how I'll just do the third wall. Y'all show up for each other.
That sounded really good.
I had some years in North Carolina. So.
All right. Well, Nathan and Kayli, thank you so much for being on Mormon Stories. This has been delightful. And again, thanks to Todd and Lindsay McCormick as well for their episode. And we wish love and unity for the Hinckley family, and it may take time, but we hope y'all are all singing and dancing and enjoying each other in or out of the church. We don't care.
Yeah.
We just want family unity. And I give my secular blessing to the Knoxville Hinckley's that unity is in the future. How's that?
Yes.
I think we're on the right track. There's been some progress recently. So,
all right. Thanks, Kayli. Thanks, Nathan.
It's been
and
fun.
Thanks, Margie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for joining us today on Mormon Stories, everybody. Please like and subscribe to this episode. Thanks to our donors that make this possible. 4/5 of our revenue come from donations, not from ad revenue. We don't do sponsorships or anything. Thanks to our donors. If you want to support this type of programming, please go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor. You can also subscribe to this channel and all the places. You can like, you can comment, you can share, and that all helps. If you want to be like these guys and apply to be on the podcast, go to mormonstories.org, click on the application button, create a 3-minute video. We will not accept your application without the 3-minute video. Fill out the application, make the 3-minute video. Tell us why you think your story would be a valuable contribution to the library. Don't just send us some link to some other video you recorded, unrelated. Again, it won't make it through. And we'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to share your story. We always love your feedback at mormonstories@gmail.com. We also read every comment on YouTube and on the blog, so please feel free to comment there. And we'd love to do more trips, not all the time, but we would love to do more destination interviews. Margaret, why are you laughing?
No reason.
Anyway, be good to each other, be kind to each other, take care, and we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Bye, everybody.